Number 10. The Flower Cartel. This one might be lesser known as they are relatively new. Not just an enemy to Wolverine either, but an enemy to likely all of mutant kind and the mutant nation of Krakoa. The Flower Cartel are a group responsible for smuggling the Krakoan miracle flowers, which mutants use to create medicinal drugs for the world in exchange for the global acknowledgement, rights, and respect of their mutant nation. They don't just steal these flowers, but have been using them to create recreational, potent, hallucinogenic drugs. The drugs they've created are so powerful that they often cause the death of users, and may even be affiliated with mind control or possession of those exposed to the drug. We're not really sure yet. In Wolverine's newest series, he teams up with CIA agent Jeff Bannister to try and find out who exactly is behind the Flower Cartel's criminal activities. Number 9. Hobgoblin. I think we all know Hobgoblin fairly well, if you're a Spider-Man fan that is, but did you know that he also tussled with Wolverine and the X-Men? This altercation went down in the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, where actually Mark Hamill himself voiced Hobgoblin. We see Wolverine, the X-Men, and Spider-Man forced to deal with Hobgoblin in the season 2 episode titled Mutants' Revenge, which is a crossover episode with the 90s X-Men animated series. Yay, I love crossovers. After Beast is kidnapped, the X-Men go out looking for him, which leads them to team up with Spider-Man, who is also looking for Hank. But Wolverine doesn't like Spider-Man, and while these two fight one another, Hobgoblin also sees this as a unique opportunity to attack all of the above parties, causing grief for Wolverine while he attempts to rescue Beast from Dr. Herbert Landon, who also is another random, lesser known enemy of Wolverine's, in that episode anyways. Number 8. The Savage Land Mutates. When it comes to other mutant and even mutate groups outside of the X-Men, people are not always as knowledgeable. If you are just discovering mutant kind now, you may not know many other mutant groups outside of the X-Men, and there's sometimes a villainous counterpart, often led by Magneto, the Brotherhood of Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there are actually a lot more groups than just these two. There are the Morlocks, who often live in the sewers, and there are the Savage Land Mutates, who generally work with Sauron and are, you guessed it, from the Savage Lands. Mutates are like mutants, but the difference is generally that they weren't born with natural abilities which later activated, or natural mutations, but instead they evolved to become mutated, gaining powers or a physical mutation. The Savage Land Mutates are occasionally enemies of the X-Men and by extension Wolverine, who is a member of the heroic mutant team. They even pop up in the 1988 run of Wolverine in issue 69, where Wolverine knocks the lot of them down in order to get to Sauron. Number 7. The Collector. While some may now be more familiar with the character of the Collector himself, thanks to the Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel Cinematic Universe films, fans may not know that he and Wolverine actually had some pretty big beef. What happened between these two? Well, Wolverine basically freed thousands of people from a planet where the Collector had them imprisoned. You see, these people were the survivors of planets that Galactus had destroyed, whom the Collector had, well, collected. But you know, to these people, they're being held against their will, as prisoners, on a shielded planet. A character named Arya, who kind of looks like a space elf, reaches out to Wolverine, seeking his help to free these people, and he answers her plea, getting into a direct conflict with the Collector later on in this story arc known as The Great Escape, part of the 1988 Wolverine series. Basically, if you want lots of random stories, you need to read the 1988 Wolverine series. Number 6. The Iron Monk. The Iron Monk appears to be a villain sent after Wolverine by the Hand while Logan is being held in prison in issue 108 of the Wolverine series that started in 1988. He proves to be a formidable foe and gives Wolverine a pretty good fight for a few pages. I will say I did enjoy it. The Iron Monk, you see, cannot be defeated by any mortal weapon nor any mortal hand. In the end, Wolverine ends up using the Honor Sword bestowed to him by the Silver Samurai. The Honor Sword was forged out of a meteorite by a demon and seems to do the trick, causing the Iron Monk to be reduced to a wisp of pink smoke and a robe.
Number 5. Doctor Strange. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not talking about Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme and Master of the Mystic Arts. I'm talking about Carlos Strange, who made his first and last appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 41. Carlos Strange was just your typical mad scientist, creating and concocting all manners of weaponry in his mountain hideout when a lightning bolt struck him, increasing the electrical energy inside his brain, making him smarter and even madder than before. 6 months after the whole lightning incident, Strange built an ultra-frequency transmitter from from radio and television parts, and used it to take mental control of Iron Man, forcing him to free him from his prison so he can enact his plan to take over the world and just give it to his daughter. Threatening to destroy the entire planet in 24 hours unless every nation surrenders to him, he launched a powerful bomb into the atmosphere to demonstrate just how serious he was. Iron Man quickly found his way to Strange's new hideout in the Atlantic and destroyed his main power source, effectively ruining his plan. With no other option, Strange withdrew and escaped custody, and we're honestly not too sure what he's cooking up now. Check out his story for yourself and let me know what you think of his character in the comments below. Number 4, the Chessman. Like so many criminal masterminds out there, Obadiah Stane was a bit too obsessed with the whole chess as a metaphor for controlling life's thing. So much so that he hired assassins who literally dressed themselves as chess pieces, you know, like pawns, bishops, knights, and rooks, with him acting as their king. The knight got a flying robot horse, the rook used a castle full of death traps, and the bishop, well, now that I think about it, he didn't do a whole lot. He was really only able to manipulate his opponent's actions. One by one, the chessmen went up against Iron Man, with none of them actually succeeding in taking him down. However, that didn't seem to be Stane's plan. The string of encounters and events actually led to Tony's addiction to alcohol to worsen, and this allowed him to buy Stark Industries and push Tony out of the Iron Man mantle for a while. Tony eventually got his act together and went up against the chess-themed team once more and emerged victorious, with Stane taking his own life with a repulsor blast. Check out these villainous pawns for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1982's Iron Man number 163. Number 3, Mr. Doll. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, his first name wasn't Ken, that would just be way too good of a joke. Nathan Dawley was a pretty average dealer in curios and art objects until he came across an extraordinary doll during his time in Africa. He discovered that he could reshape this doll to resemble whomever he wanted, and that he could cause that person to feel immense pain by manipulating the doll's features. He decided the best way to use his new voodoo doll was to coerce rich business people into legally signing over control of their business to him, which worked pretty great for him until he decided to go after Tony Stark. Tony found it tough to fight against this villain because initially he was unable to withstand the pain caused by the doll. So in true Tony Stark fashion, he built a suit just for the occasion. Now able to withstand the power, Tony used a force beam to change the doll's likeness into that of Mr. Doll's, and the immense pain this caused Mr. Doll caused him to pass out, allowing for his capture and arrest. Fast forward a bit and we see Mr. Doll once again, however this time his consciousness is trapped and split between two mannequins, Jake and William, aka the Brothers Grimm. This didn't last for too long though, because he was eventually beaten by Spider-Woman and his consciousness dispersed for good. Take a look at the voodoo doll wielding Mr. Doll for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 48. Number 2, the Unicorn. Milos Masaryk was a Soviet intelligence agent assigned to security detail at the laboratory of an inventor who was developing advanced weaponry. One of the inventor's projects was a helmet that could discharge destructive energy blasts from something called the Power Horn, and Milos came into possession of this helmet after his inventor hightailed it to the US, thus starting his mission as the Unicorn of avenging the disgrace caused by the inventor's defection. His first encounter with Iron Man really isn't much to write home about since Tony let the villain walk away scot-free. However, several months later, after a not so healthy dose of brainwashing and augmentation, Milos returned to the US with the goal of doing whatever it takes to reverse an unfortunate side effect of his treatment. However, Iron Man was able to thwart his plans once again. The Unicorn teamed up with the Red Ghost, the Mandarin, and even Titanium Man, all of them promising to find a cure for him if he defeated Iron Man. However, obviously none of them were actually going to follow through with that. Flash forward a bit and we see the Unicorn once again make his way to the US to bring down Stark Tower alongside Spymaster and some other baddies. This was a bit of a weird time for Iron Man and the Unicorn because near the end of this arc, the two actually ended up teaming up to take down Captain Atlas. However, after they were done, they went back to being not so friendly with each other. Take a look at this magically named villain for yourself, starting with their first appearance all the way back in 1964's Tales of Suspense number 56. Number 1, the Blood Brothers. Like so many great Marvel heroes before him, there was a brief time when Iron Man was flying around having cosmic adventures with space aliens. When Thanos first appeared in the Iron Man comics, we were introduced to some of his henchmen as well, two of them being the Blood Brothers, Guri and Ruhouse Blood. The alien siblings acted as Thanos' guardians of his Earth base, however, they were easily defeated by the Thing and Iron Man, and this just disgusted Thanos to the core, so he sent them away for a while to an unknown location. Years later, they made it back to Earth to try and get revenge on Iron Man, but they were defeated once again and ended up locked in Rikers Island. Fast forward a little bit and we see Ruhouse die and Guri go on solo, eventually becoming a part of the Hood's criminal army. Guri later had his cosmic potential unleashed, and this gave him a crazy power-up, and he became one of the Slaughter Lords under the name Brother Blood. Now it's not really said when, but at some point Ruhouse came back to life and the Blood Brothers reunited once again and joined a new incarnation of the Lethal Legion as a part of a contest that was assembled by the Grand Master. All of these fights around the world were thwarted by the Avengers though, including the Blood Brothers fight in Rome, and the Lethal Legion regrouped, escaped to nowhere, and decided to stay together as a team just to see what they could accomplish together. Check out this villainous brotherly bond for yourself, starting with 1973's Iron Man number 55, and try to name a better duo in the comments. Oh wait.
Number 10. Father. Father was the only name we had for one of the scientists behind the mad science secret robotics project known as Project Descendant. Father, Mother, and Brother were the code names for the scientists behind the project, which ended up creating a race of synthetic beings deemed as hybrid. Due to the three team leaders bickering, the beings they created ended up being released out into the world. Later, the Father would attempt to lure the descendants of these beings back, and would also go on to work on expanding the Deathlock project, aiming ambitiously to connect all the Deathlock versions of superhumans, joining them together to build a better world. It was during this time that he crossed paths with the very secretive X-Force, which at the time was led by Wolverine, who had refused Cyclops' orders to disband the team, keeping it going in secret. Number 9. Brothers of the New World. Wolverine ended up fighting and taking out pretty much all of this group because they kidnapped and killed his friend Lucy, who tried to escape them. They were a cult whose leader, Cry, kept a harem of women at their base. Wolverine set about attacking the cult and killing all of its members right around the time one of the women attempted to escape, who was actually a government agent who had been investigating the cult before being taken herself and added to their numbers of imprisoned women. This group of villains made an appearance during the first story arc of the 2003 Wolverine series entitled Brotherhood. Oh, also they were in part created by Greg Rucka, fun fact. Number 8. LCD. LCD is one of Donald Pierce's creations. She is an android who resembles a little girl and was created to kill Wolverine by self-detonating. However, she did not herself want to die, as she also was a smart android who ended up valuing her life. In the end, she reprogrammed the android doppelganger of Wolverine known as Albert, built to lure the real Wolverine into her trap, and instead would become Wolverine's ally. Number 7. Lazar. Lazar, or Azrael as he is also known, claims to be another form of death, one that we've seen Wolverine face before, and although we don't always see it, Lazar is an angel of death that Wolverine in theory is forced to face every time he has a near-death experience. Lazar battles for Logan's life, but Wolverine manages to fight him back each time, prevailing and ensuring his life belongs to him only. However, should Wolverine fail to defeat Azrael, the being would then claim his life and he would die. Apparently. Number 6. Tiger Shark. One of the first time these two ever crossed paths, it was one of the most random fights in comics. Wolverine and Tiger Shark originally started fighting because La Bandera, a mutant with emotion, manipulation, and energy manipulation abilities, who mainly uses her powers to make people feel more patriotic and empathic, was fighting Tiger Shark. Wolverine stumbled upon their fight and felt attracted to La Bandera and compelled to help her, mainly due to her mutant ability, obviously. Together the two made quick work of Tiger Shark, and then ran away together, because that's how that goes.
Number 5. Plant Man. Samuel Smithers was obsessed with plants and even studied them throughout his jobs. He wanted to invent a device that allowed communication between plants and humans. He had been working on this ray gun that he thought could actually make it work and create this open line of communication. It was only when it was hit by lightning when it actually got the ability to control plants. You know, he had superhuman strength and he has the ability to communicate and control plants. After he placed Captain America in a coma with his invention Pretty Poison, he got the attention of Spider-Man, who teamed up with the Falcon to take down Plant Man and get the cure for Captain America. Number 4. Grizzly. Maxwell Markham, aka Grizzly, is quite the strange supervillain. Basically, he looks like an actual grizzly bear in this mechanical suit. His story is that he used to be a wrestler until J. Jonah Jameson ruined his career with one article, which was the reason why he lost his license to be a pro wrestler. He wanted revenge on the man who ruined his career and later attacked the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man showed up and was able to take down Grizzly and sent him straight to prison. Grizzly had super strength, durability, and super sharp claws. Number 3. Kangaroo. Before Frank Oliver became the Kangaroo, he was just some guy who loved studying kangaroo back at his home in Australia. He used to be a boxer, but he got kicked out for how he fought and really hurt one of his other opponents. When he made his way over to America, he got quite into trouble and even caught the eye of Spider-Man, since Kangaroo had stolen an armored truck. but Spider-Man was able to apprehend him. Kangaroo later got surgery by Dr. Jonas Harrow, and this is what gave him his powers where he could actually leap like a kangaroo, but a lot higher and much further. Apparently, even before his surgery, he did have kind of some abilities where he could leap more so than the average human, but not to the extent of what the surgery gave him. Number 2, Big Wheel. Jackson Wheel, aka Big Wheel, got the Tinkerer to make him this big armored wheel that would, lead him to become the Big Wheel. This all started because Rocket Racer, someone he hired to find any dirt on himself, wanted more money for something extremely bad that he found on Wheel, something that would ruin his entire job in life. He found out about the Tinkerer from Rocket Racer, which led him to the creation of the Armored Wheel. He attacked Rocket Racer during a fight with Spider-Man. He almost killed Rocket Racer, but Spider-Man saved him, and then Big Wheel lost control, went into the river, and was later arrested and sent to prison. But don't worry, he was back to a life of crime shortly after that. They always do. Number 1, The Wall. Yes, there was a supervillain named The Wall that has gone up against Spider-Man in the past. And a little fun story, I remember hearing about this villain a few years ago from my friend who was going back and he was reading all of the original Amazing Spider-Man issues. I remember he sent me a picture while he was reading it, and I literally could not stop laughing because his slogan was, "This is one wall you will never crawl." I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing. Like, he's definitely one of the most weird and just strange supervillains that Spider-Man has ever gone up against. Okay, so a little backstory. Joshua Waldemeier, wow, had the job of laying bricks down, and one day, an explosion happened and hit a brick wall that had just been built, sending it crashing down and burying him under all of these bricks. But didn't kill him. And actually, the bricks merged with his body, which turned him into the wall. Since he was an actual wall, Spider-Man had a hard time affecting him with any and all physical attacks. Spider-Man's web attacks didn't even work on him. But they later found themselves sitting on a bench and just working things out like two grown adults. A grown man spider and a grown man wall.
Number 10, Apocalypse. While you likely know Apocalypse, who has been in many mutant-themed comics as well as animated series and even an X-Men film, you might not recall the time that Thor and Apocalypse faced one another. That's right, these two have beef, and it actually goes way back. We learned about their first fight in a flashback in Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers issue number 6. Here we learn that the two came to blows more than 1,000 years in the past, after Apocalypse had learned that Thor would be the one to stop him in the future. Apocalypse tracks down a younger Thor, who is not yet worthy of Mjolnir, and instead wields his axe known as Jarnbjorn. Unsurprisingly, during this first fight, Thor would be defeated by Apocalypse and was forced to retreat. But this would not be the end of their feud for the two enemies, and they would of course come to blows again later on in their lives, as was predicted. Number 9, Mangog. Mangog is a villain who embodies and carries within itself the rage of their entire race, which was destroyed by Odin. We don't really know why Odin and Asgard decided to eliminate this race of beings, but they did. And so Mangog came to existence as the physical manifestation of that race's hatred towards all things Asgardian. This hate obviously extended to Thor. This has prompted the two to clash over the years. Oftentimes Mangog is too strong to be defeated in battle, however the being feeds off of psychic energies, and if one can cut it off from its source of hatred, which fuels Mangog, it could easily be defeated. Number 8, Gladiator. Gladiator always tends to show up to fight Thor in the most random stories. One such story even sees him taking on the all-new Thor, Jane Foster's Thor, when the Shi'ar gods decide they would like to prove their worth by defeating her in the Challenge of the Gods. In order to get her to compete, they decide to send the Imperial Guard, Gladiator included, to kidnap her. The Imperial Guard fought against the Asgardians but were defeated. In the end, Gladiator did decide to team up with Thor to take down the Shi'ar gods, who kinda were taking out their wrath on the Shi'ar people. This led to Quentin Quire becoming the new god of Shi'ar, which is, pretty random. Random stories like this where Gladiator would be pulled into strange conflicts with Thor, Jane Foster, or Thor Odinson appear to be a recurring thing in the comics. Number 7, Tomorrow Man. Speaking of weird storylines involving conflict between Gladiator and Thor, Archer Zarko was also involved in one such similar conflict. Zarko is known as the Tomorrow Man, an evil scientist from the future who first came into conflict with Thor when he traveled to the past in order to more easily acquire a nuclear bomb. bomb. This prompted Thor himself to time travel in order to pursue Tomorrow Man. Later on, Zarko would also recruit Gladiator from an alternate future to fight and defeat Thor. Speaking of that feud that those two had previously. Number 6. Ragnarok. For those who cannot see the sometimes dramatic similarities between the superhero genre and soap operas, by the way, this is one of them. Ragnarok is Thor's evil clone. He was created using a strand of Thor's hair that Iron Man had found. Or so Tony claims. I definitely think he was pulling out strands of Thor's hair while he slept, or just pulled some out of his hairbrush super sneakily. But no, the story is he just found a hair of Thor's and decided to keep it. Just in case. In case of what, Tony? In case of what? This of course later led to the creation of Ragnarok and the use of him during the events of the First Civil War, when Thor would not join with Iron Man and Stark decided to use this one hair he happened to be saving to create a clone of Thor to basically rally and inspire the troops. Ragnarok would appear to perish at the hands of Hercules, but would later return once more and even join Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers during the events of Dark Reign. Number 5. Empath. Manuel de la Rocha made his first appearance in the original New Mutants series, where he was part of Emma Frost's team known as the Hellions. He's recently reappeared in the newest Hellions series from 2020 and proves just how powerful, but also how sadistic he can be. Empath's power is, you guessed it, empathy, and he can use this power to not only sense others' emotions, but also to control them, in effect manipulating others into doing whatever he wishes them to do. His influence can be subtle, such that someone might not even realize they're being manipulated by him, or it can be more forceful, turning his victims into complete husks of their former selves and bending them fully to his will. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega level mutant, skilled in energy manipulation and absorption. Yet he is somehow the lesser known of all the Summers despite his insane power levels. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well and use them for himself on the rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1, and yet he is considered the most powerful of these three. Number 3. Orphan Maker and Nanny. Orphan Maker still remains a relatively mysterious character, though is also one who still proves to be a force to be reckoned with in combat. Orphan Maker is also known as Peter and was part of a plot of Mr. Sinister's originally. However, when Mr. Sinister decided that Peter could not be controlled, he decided to eliminate him. Nanny, an insane cyborg, however, saved him, believing it was her responsibility to look after orphan mutant children and protect them. Although I will say she's got a weird way of going about it. While insane, Nanny was also once a scientist and remains quite intelligent. She actually outfitted Orphan Maker with weapons and a powerful suit to help her in her task. While it's still unclear as to what Orphan Maker's true mutant powers are, and while he seems to still have the mind of a child, probably due to Nanny's manipulation, his suit and weapons make him a formidable foe in combat, and he often uses pixie dust in battle to help Nanny influence and control the minds of their opponents, as she herself is a telepath, but a weak one, so she needs a little bit of help. Needs a little bit of pixie dust. Even during a fight with Cyclops, Scott's optic blasts were unable to harm Orphan Maker while he was in his armor, with Scott's blast simply reflecting off the armor, causing more harm than help really. Number 2. Trinary. Considering the modern age we live in, Trinary is a pretty powerful mutant. Her abilities allow her to control all tech that is within her line of sight. She has used these powers to move massive sums of money digitally and to manipulate and control Sentinel tech. Currently on Krakoa, Trinary is one of the few technopathic mutants trusted with the important project known as Sleeping Giant, wherein mutants monitor for upcoming advancement in Sentinel technology, such as Nimrods or the creation of a mother mold, so that they can ideally put a stop to its development. Project Sleeping Giant were instrumental in helping the X-Men to destroy a mother mold that Orchis was creating before it went online. Number 1. Bailey Hoskins. Now you might think I'm joking here if you happen to know the obscure Bailey Hoskins, but I'm really not. Bailey appeared in his own miniseries titled X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever. He was known for being the worst X-Man ever because his ability only allowed him to do one thing, explode. But he didn't have any regeneration powers, so he basically was a mutant who could never use his powers, otherwise he'd kill himself. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. So how is that powerful? Well, it's also implied in the series that when he does choose to sacrifice himself and blow up the villain of the story, that he makes it possible for Earth 616 to come into existence. So without him, we wouldn't have the main Marvel continuity that we know and love today, potentially. If saving the entire continuity from becoming a dystopian future isn't powerful, then I don't know what is.
Number 10. Death Urge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Death Urge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Death Urge targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Death Urge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Death Urge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Death Urge besides the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis' earlier life, Death Urge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis' girlfriend killed herself and Death Urge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Death Urge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9. Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8. Star Stalker. Varanus aka Star Stalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Krull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a Fantastic Four villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, you know, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with Mole Man and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes.
Number 6. Cyclops. No, not Cyclops, Cyclops. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclops was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclops was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclops losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent, and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Jarella, but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy. Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams, including the Young Avengers, A-Force, the West Coast Avengers, and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, force, hypercosmic awareness, alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mother sacrificed themselves to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now, I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Vengeance #1, wanna check her out for yourself. Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now, what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, Number 1. Number 3. Aries. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Aries was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Aries became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Aries possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Aries has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics Number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, Number 13. Number 1. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the Mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage and the Ultimates, We have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb and can even go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So, yeah. He deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1. Number 10, the actor. Now, I've heard of method actors, but this definitely takes the meaning to a whole other level. An ace infiltrator whose real identity is unknown that worked for the Russians back when they were an evil empire. Like Spider-Man's nemesis the Chameleon, the actor can perfectly impersonate anyone, and he was quite successful at stealing state secrets until he ran up against Tony Stark. The actor traveled to the United States and disguised as Stark easily entered Stark Industries, where he succeeded in not only obtaining some important blueprints, but also discovered that Tony Stark himself was Iron Man. The actor left feeling satisfied with his work and left cleanup duty to his agents. However, Tony was able to overcome them very easily and ended up traveling to the USSR to pose as the actor to foil their evil plans. And talk about a role reversal, am I right? When the real actor returned to his employer, the Red Barbarian, he was shot right as he came because he was deemed a traitor. This didn't actually kill him though, because he later resurfaced to work for the Red Barbarian to once again take down Tony Stark. Why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 42. Number 9, the Melter. Bruno Horgan was once an American industrialist specializing in weapons for the US military until a government inspection revealed he was using shoddy materials, and you can probably guess why that's not really good. Tony Stark scooped up his defense contracts because, you know, his weapons actually worked, and a bankrupt Horgan decided the only rational thing to do was to blame Tony for sabotaging his work and ruining his life. Luckily for him, and unlucky for literally everyone else, he found himself among his ruined company's assets a weapon prototype that generated a beam capable of melting iron on contact, and this began his evil reign as the Melter. Tony was able to defeat this villain pretty easily. However, he was still deemed enough of a threat to create a new suit made out of aluminum, and good thing he did, because in his second encounter with the Melter, that completely saved him. Skip ahead a little bit and we see the Melter return with a new version of his melting ray and team up with Whiplash and the Blizzard to take down Tony Stark under the orders of Justin Hammer. Tony was able to overcome all three of the villains alongside Cave, and Horgan was sent to Rikers Island, where he met a nuclear physicist that helped him further augment his equipment so that it would work against Iron Man's aluminum armor. Fast forward just a little bit more and we see the Melter reach the end of his journey at the hands of Scourge, who was posing as his assistant. Take a look at this character story for yourself, starting with 1963's Tales of Suspense number 47. Number 8, Garganus. Before Iron Man found his groove fighting industrial spies and the occasional world conqueror, he was stuck duking it out with alien robots like Garganus. Created by an unknown and unnamed alien race that had been scouting the Earth for the past 80,000 years, Garganus was built in the image of a Neanderthal because that was the only species that the aliens had encountered. It first arrived in the town of Granville and used its hypnotizing eyes to conquer the townspeople, but the aliens' plans were quickly foiled by Iron Man, who was alerted by the invasion because one of the young women trapped by Garganus didn't show up for their date, and nobody stands up Tony Stark, so he knew something was up. After a little back and forth with the robot, Tony figured out that Garganus was actually a robot and decided to surround it with powerful magnets that tore it apart completely because, you know, magnets. After the aliens realize that maybe the Earth's defenses are too good, they decide to fly away, and we don't hear about them again until 1999's Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty Volume 1 number 5. Fun fact, Garganus is technically the first villain Iron Man ever faced, so why not check it out in its first appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 40, and let me know what you think of this caveman robot in the comments below. Number 7, Termite. I'm sure we all know the classic way that most people gain their powers in comics. You know, an accident happens and instead of dying, they gain abilities. Pretty standard, right? Well, I think Marvel was a little bit tired of that because Neil Donaldson was just born with his ability to disintegrate whatever he touches. After discovering his powers, he was hired by Obadiah Stane to eliminate the competition. However, James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, quickly got word of this and set out to take the Termite down. During his third fight with the villain, the first two ending with the Termite escaping, Rhodes was seemingly evenly matched with him until Tony Stark showed up with the mutant power neutralizer and shot the Termite with it, removing his powers completely, allowing him to be arrested and taken to jail. Word of this got back to Stane and he hired the Enforcer to take him out. However, the Enforcer was taken out first by the Scourge of the Underworld, so basically the Termite was saved completely by accident. The Termite was later seen sulking in jail, and that's really the last we've seen of him. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 189. Number 6, Vibro. Alton Vibro was your average seismologist until he fell into the San Andreas Fault while testing an experimental machine, and of course he ends up with super vibrating powers because this is the Marvel Universe, and like I said a little bit ago, if you have an accident in the Marvel Universe, then you're probably going to end up with some sick powers. These powers allowed Alton to generate high-level seismic vibrations and fire them from his hands, causing shockwaves, opening chasms, and generating earthquakes. Thinking his employer Frankenfortney was to blame for his accident, he sought revenge on him and thus began his villain career as Vibro. After 2 battles with James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, Vibro was eventually taken down with the help of Tony Stark in the Mark I Iron Man armor. Vibro hasn't only been a problem for Iron Man though, and he has also gone up against the Falcon, Nomad, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers West Coast, and even Wolverine. We later see him team up with the Mandarin alongside a bunch of other Avengers to once again try and take down the Armored Avenger. Making his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 186, why not give this villain story a read for yourself?
Number 5. Citadel. Despite the fact that Wolverine did later try to help Citadel and likely never truly saw him as an enemy, Citadel resented both Wolverine and Alpha Flight after they stopped him from achieving his goal. Citadel was one of the antagonists in issue 5 of Wolverine First Class, where Citadel was also known then as Weapon Y. Wolverine suspected he was also made by the same people who had put adamantium inside of him, as Citadel had adamantium skin, or an adamantium exoskeleton externally instead of internally. Citadel was a soldier who was injured in action and ended up being experimented on instead of being properly treated. He wanted the government to be held accountable and was holding government officials hostage in Quebec, Canada. Wolverine's mission was to deal with the situation, extract the superhuman threat, and secure the hostages. He didn't know that Citadel himself was also a potential victim until it was too late, and the government stepped in to cart Citadel off without Wolverine being able to do or say much about it. Number 4. Abdul Alhaz. Fun fact, did you know that Abdul Alhaz in H.P. Lovecraft lore is the character credited with the creation of the Necronomicon? Yeah, he is, and as such, he is also acknowledged as being its creator in the Marvel Universe as well. He and Wolverine came to blows in Madripoor when Abdul was trying to take over Tiger's crime syndicate. Abdul attempted to attack Wolverine with a demon, but in the end, Wolverine survived, and Abdul ended up trapped in the same demonic realm his demon pals had come from. Sucks to suck, I guess. Number 3. Damage. For those who are unfamiliar with Damage, he's basically Marvel's version of the Terminator. There's a lot of parallels there anyways. He was originally the human Jamie Ortiz. The Kingpin turned him into a cybernetic being after Damage was brought to the brink of death by Punisher. Kingpin later gave Damage cosmetic surgery to make him look identical to the Punisher as well, and used him against Frank Castle, attempting to break Castle and ruin the Punisher's name by having Damage kill a bunch of innocent people. Wolverine and Damage both ripped one another apart in a fight, and when Punisher finally showed up, he finished Damage off by setting him on fire. Number 2. Geist. Nikolaus Geist was a mad scientist from Germany working on the side of the Axis during World War II. He was working to create a new type of super soldier for Germany, similar to the United States super soldier Captain America, aka Steve Rogers. Ruhouse was his main test subject, and in the end, Wolverine was the one to free Ruhouse and put a stop to Geist. Geist was also a cyborg, but Wolverine cut off his metal shell in an attempt to kill him. It was later revealed that while he was suspected dead and was incapacitated after this fight, he did however manage to survive. However, soon after, another mutant, Magneto, did kill him, so he dead. Number 1. Ruhouse. Going back again to the days of battle in Madripoor for who would get to be the king or queen of crime, and in effect rule Madripoor, Wolverine found himself allied with Yasan Hoan, aka Tiger. It was also during this time that he first fought with Ruhouse, who made his first appearance in issue 4 of Wolverine's series from 1988. Ruhouse was allied with General Koi, and got his superpowers from either his relation to the mythical race of Asgardians, or from being a mutant, or maybe a bit of both. It's a little foggy. Though they are enemies and remained enemies thereafter, Wolverine did still save Ruhouse from Geist, because experimenting on people in Logan's book is just plain wrong. And I think in everyone's book, let's not experiment on people. Can we all agree on that?
Number 10. Mindworm. Mindworm, aka William Turner, but not the William Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean, is very powerful with his mind, allowing himself to read people's thoughts, drain people's energy, and create illusions. Mindworm has a very large head and brain that he was born with. At one time, he was neighbors to Flash Thompson and Peter Parker when he moved in with Flash. Since Mindworm was always feeding off people's minds, it was no surprise that he was trying to feed off of Peter's mind as well. But since Peter's so smart, he could fight off Mindworm's attack to his mind. This upset Mindworm, and he later fought Peter, but of course he was unsuccessful and lost. Mindworm used this as an opportunity to figure out why he was even doing this, and after taking a hard look at himself and realizing that his anger was coming from what happened to his parents, he makes peace with Peter, and he even uses his slogan, "With great power comes great responsibility." Unfortunately, Mindworm's story doesn't end great, since criminals manipulate him back to a life of crime, and he went back to prison, and afterwards he was killed by a group of people on the street. It's pretty depressing. Number 9, the Spot. So before he became the Spot, he was known as a guy named Jonathan, a scientist who was working for none other than Kingpin. Yes, so you know he has to be pretty evil working for a guy like Kingpin. Anyways, Kingpin wanted Jonathan to figure out a way to replicate Cloak's powers. Not such an easy task, as Jonathan would soon find out. Instead, he opened up a portal that sent him into a spotted dimension. I wonder if that's where he got his name from. When he was inside that dimension, his skin changed to where he had black spots all over bleached white skin. These spots were all around his entire body, and would allow him to teleport anything that he touches. He hated Spider-Man so much that he even formed a group with some of the people that will show up later on this list. Spoiler alert, one of them may be Grizzly, or maybe Kangaroo. Maybe, but you'll have to keep watching to find out if that's true. But they were part of the Spider-Man Revenge Squad. Of course, it didn't really work out for him. Number 8, the Living Brain. So the Living Brain was created by the character Dr. Petty, and is basically an artificial intelligence robot machine. There was nothing that the Living Brain couldn't solve. So when it was brought to a high school, it gave 2 people a pretty good idea of what they could do with this crazy robot. They had the idea to steal it and use it for whatever they would go out and gamble. They attempted to steal it, but Dr. Petty didn't want to lose his creation and fought them off, and caused one of them to hit the Living Brain, damaging it and causing it to lose control of itself. It then turned on everyone and was on a mission to destroy, but luckily Spider-Man defeated it and saved the day. The Living Brain has appeared several times after this by, people either trying to use it to take down bullies or try to rob banks. The Living Brain was even part of the Sinister Six at one point. Number 7, Swarm. This is definitely a weird one. So are a lot of these ones on this list. So the Swarm was a Nazi scientist who survived World War II and was really into bees and poisons. He really wanted to try to make the bees he was finding very villainous and use them to his advantage. He discovered a beehive, and since he was trying to make them change their behavior, he was successful at doing that. But that is what ended up getting him killed by the bees and allowed the bees to use his consciousness and what was left of his body to become the Swarm. He has the abilities to fly and even turn as big or as small as he likes. He can also manipulate himself into different shapes. This makes it very hard for Spider-Man to fight him, since really he's just a swarm of bees. He also could control not only bees, but any type of insect. Number 6, Leapfrog. So Leapfrog, aka Vincent Patillo, loved to invent an assortment of just random items. He always wanted more though after every invention, and he was never really satisfied. That is, until he developed this invention so that he would be able to leap several stories in the air. He used this invention and created a suit to become the Leapfrog. This is how he began to get into the criminal world, but he didn't have the greatest success there, and there's not a lot about him.
Number 5, Bloodscream. Bloodscream would end up partnering with Wolverine's other lesser-known nemesis that we talked about on the part 1 of this list, Ruhouse. While many associate these two as being partners in crime, this isn't the only Wolverine villain that Bloodscream has teamed up with in the past. He has also teamed up with Albert and LCD as well, and in the Old Man Logan universe partnered up with both Kraven and Ruhouse in an attempt to help Kraven capture Old Man Logan. Number 4, Nuke. Many people forget about Nuke, but he is a lesser known villain in the comics who was actually created by Wolverine during his time as a Weapon X operative. He ended up securing Nuke when he was just a child for Project Homegrown. Weapon Plus, with Wolverine's help, would later drive him insane and turn him into a brainwashed cyborg to be used as a weapon. Even years later, these two still come to blows. During Death of Wolverine, Nuke would accept a contract to capture Wolverine and bring him into Viper alive. This would lead to an epic fight between the two, where Wolverine would only end up winning by smashing his own skull repeatedly into Nuke's until he was unable to fight back. Is this the most metal way that a fight has been won in comics? Let me know in the comments. Most metal fights, that's a list we need to do. Number 3. Romulus. Does everyone remember Romulus? One of the most weirdly epic and yet short-lived villains of almost all time in Wolverine's rogue history. He had this huge buildup, and we went on to find out that he was an ancient villain from prehistoric times, only to find out that this was all a lie and apparently a ruse to distract Wolverine. He was, however, the villain responsible for cutting Daken out of his dead mother, Itsu's womb, and for training him and turning him into a killing machine. He manipulated Daken from day one, helping to turn him against his father, and was the one responsible for helping him to bond the melted down Muramasa blade to Daken's claws. Or at least helped him get the idea. Because, you know, the Tinkerer obviously did that in actuality. I don't even know if Romulus knows how to melt metal. Probably. Number 2. Gorgon. If you don't know the Gorgon and this pretty awesome story featuring him, you should. During the third Wolverine series from 2003, Wolverine ends up getting entangled with the Gorgon when he is attempting to locate Ichiro, the missing son of one of his dead fiance's cousins, who has been kidnapped. I say one of his dead fiancés because I feel like Wolverine's got a few of those. Gorgon is a telepathic mutant who, as his name implies, can turn those who make direct eye contact with him into stone. Gorgon ends up capturing Wolverine and giving him over to the Hand, who brainwashed him and turned him into their own agent. However, Wolverine would later break free of their control and would even go on to kill Gorgon using his own claws to reflect Gorgon's deadly gaze back at him, transforming Gorgon into stone before shattering him. But don't worry, Gorgon would be resurrected later on and return. Gotta love those old mythology references. Comics taking old stories and making them new again, and also never letting people die. Number 1. Ogen. Ogen was once Wolverine's martial arts mentor and a powerful sorcerer and telepath, but later became Logan's enemy after being spurned by Wolverine, joining the Yakuza, and going on to kidnap, train, and brainwash Kitty Pryde during the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine story. Ogen even managed to turn Kitty Pryde against Logan, sending her to attack him when Wolverine had come to rescue her. Fortunately, Wolverine was able to break Ogen's control over Kitty. In the end, Kitty fought Ogen but was unable to defeat her former master. However, Wolverine was able to do so. After being beaten but spared by Wolverine, Ogen attacked Kitty once more and was killed by Wolverine as a result. Of course, this is comics, so this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Ogen by a long shot. Number 10. Prodigy. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about Prodigy, as he's been MIA for some time in the comics and was depowered during the events of M-Day. But with the magic of Krakoa and Dawn of X, he was able to return to us, being resurrected and also regaining his powers. 1. Prodigy happens to be a super genius, but this is also because he's a telepath with the ability to basically mimic anyone's skill set and share their knowledge while nearby. This has also been shown in the past to extend to fighting precognition, where he can basically use his abilities to read a person and predict their next move of attack in a battle, which is pretty sweet. He often also builds his own advanced tech, and even when depowered is known to possess a great level of intellect, making him a challenging adversary whether or not he has his mutant abilities. Even as a depowered mutant, you might not want to mess with him. Number 9. Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind, aka Regan Wingard, recently popped back up in the giant-sized Nightcrawler comics and was welcomed into the mutant nation of Krakoa. Some, however, may not know or appreciate her mutant history and background. Just who is Lady Mastermind? Well, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, aka the original villain known as Mastermind. Her powers take after her father's, allowing her to create realistic illusions projected into her target's minds. While she also has an even lesser known suspected half-sister, Regan's powers are often depicted as being the more powerful between the two, with it even being said that her abilities are even more stronger than her father's. Additionally, she is also fairly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, a skill set her father actually very much lacked. He was hilarious in a fight. He's like a rag doll. Sorry Mastermind. Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant with the abilities of super strength. I know, very hilarious considering his name. He can grant himself immediate muscle mass that basically allows him to change size and increase his strength when needed. It is yet unknown just how strong Gentle can make himself, and he is also known for being someone who could potentially even take on the Hulk, although he is more of a pacifist, hence his name. Gentle's real name is Nesno Abidemi. I hope I'm saying that right. Nesno Abidemi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's a hard one to say. He was raised in in Wakanda, but always felt like an outsider because his father was Russian. When his mutant abilities surfaced, it was actually Aurora Monroe Storm, who was queen at the time in Wakanda, who encouraged him to be sent to the Xavier Institute so he could learn how to better control his powers. His vibranium tattoos are also meant to help him to control those powers. Also, vibranium tattoos are super cool, but I think they're also super painful to get, so maybe don't get them. You can't, because it's not a real substance, but still. Number 7. Egg. Fabio Medina might not seem like a powerful mutant based on his ability, but since his rise to the supremely important mutant group known as the Five on Krakoa, he can be considered one of the most important and powerful mutants around. When he combines his powers with that of the Five, he has control over life and death. Originally, the bouncy gold balls that he shot forth from his chest were believed to be nothing special, but it was later revealed that these balls were actually infertile eggs, which could be used in the process of resurrecting new mutants. Number 6. Tempest. Eva Bell is another member of the Five. She has actually appeared in less issues than Egg, if you can believe it, despite the fact that she has a pretty neat power set, and it's been neat since the beginning, which allows her to time travel. Tempest, as she used to be known, was able to control the passage of time in a specific pocket of space. She could also slow time in a current space that she also inhabited, either slowing time around her or creating time bubbles to manipulate time in that bubble, where she could speed it up or slow it down. The only challenge for her has been losing control of her powers, which can cause them to behave unpredictably. Still, controlling time is a pretty impressive and powerful ability to have. Number 5. Curse. Also known as Algem, Curse is one of the strongest dark elves around. He at one point allied himself with Malekith, and while he often lacks the direction, intelligence, and depth to really become a standout villain when it comes to his interactions with the Thunder God, he is still likely one of the more powerful of Thor's villains. Curse only served Malekith for a time, as well as he later found himself betrayed by Malekith, causing him to break ties with the other dark elf. The Beyonder also bolstered Curse's power levels, increasing them using his own cosmic energy, after sensing and being attracted to Curse's intense hatred for Thor. The Beyonder, of course, just gave him a power boost for funsies, cause, well, he's kind of chaotic like that. Number 4. Desak, the Destroyer of Gods. Desak was a villain who originally started out as a pretty kind-hearted and pious man. He became a villain after feeling that the sacrifice of his daughter to his gods had not really been justified. Losing his faith in the gods as his people were attacked, he decided to accept godlike powers that were offered to him, so he could avenge his and people's losses. Desak set out to kill the gods and was predicted to be the one who would also strike down the gods of Olympus in due time. As such, Thor set out to stop Desak before he could arrive, venturing out into space with Hercules and Beta Ray Bill. Number 3. The Enchanters 3. The Enchanters 3 were brothers who were also masterful sorcerers. They each were armed with their own living talisman, which amplifies their magical powers, and their names were Forsung, Brona, and Magner. Yep, they certainly sound like they could be Thor villains just based on those names. These brothers decided one day that they just wanted to conquer Asgard after running into the warriors and Thor's companions Balder and Sif. When Balder and Sif caught on, they rushed down to Earth to warn Thor of the Enchanters' plot. Thor teams up with his fellow Asgardians, including Odin, and manages to defeat the Enchanters, slaying one of them and trapping the other two in an alternate dimension. It's also later revealed that the brothers actually had a fourth sibling named Enrocked, and following this revelation, we also learn that his formerly trapped brothers are free and have also returned, prompting Thor to once again take on these magical foes. Although having a fourth brother kind of ruins the whole Enchanters 3 name, but I guess because one of them was dead it still works, because now there's still 3? Number 2. Bloodaxe the Executioner. Bloodaxe is a villain who basically gets all of her powers from a mystical Asgardian axe, which grants its user power but also corrupts them. It was once wielded by Scourge the Executioner, and as such is imbued with evil energy that also compels whoever wields it to kill, eventually driving them into an insane bloodlust. Bloodaxe wielded this power to kill low-level criminals indiscriminately, and as such attracted the attention of Thor. Oddly enough, while Jackie Lucas, Bloodaxe's civilian identity, first appeared in the late 80s in the Thor comics, she would not appear as Bloodaxe until more than 50 issues later. She also originally wore Scourge's armor during her first appearance as Bloodaxe, in addition to wielding the enchanted axe itself. Number 1. Quicksand. Quicksand was a pretty random villain who first appeared in Thor issue 392. She was originally a human who was transformed into a sand elemental creature due to a nuclear accident. So basically she's female Sandman Man. As such, she holds a pretty big grudge against nuclear power, which seems to have been trendy to do in the 80s, as there was also a protest going on at the power plant she attacked at the time that she attacked it. This comic was likely reflecting the opinion of the times, as the Chernobyl disaster would have only happened a couple of years prior to this issue's release. It came out in 1988 and the disaster at Chernobyl happened in 1986. History. People at the time were likely afraid of nuclear reactors and the dangers of having a power plant nearby due to the relatively recent and severe disaster that had happened. Quicksand as such attacks the power plant, blaming nuclear energy for her mutation, when Thor comes along and stops her. Oddly enough, this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Quicksand either in the comics, or even the last time we'd see her fight Thor. Still, she's pretty obscure.
Number 10. Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill SHIELD agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now, similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team, he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9. Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained SHIELD agent and sidekick of Kazar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel Team-Up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now, she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however, thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now, after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and several Avengers, including Mockingbird herself, left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel Team-Up number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on, and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vel, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now, if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 7. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now, Simon inherited his father's company, Williams Innovations, and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans. One of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited, and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45.
Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time.
Number 4. Sons of the Serpent. Now over the years there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all of them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by Serpent Man himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3. Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though, when it came to their magic type.
Number 2. The Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1. Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities, which are tied to that equipment, is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess.
Number 10. Justice. Also known as Vance Astrovic, he has latent mutant telekinesis powers that were activated when he encountered his future self, Major Victory of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Major also traveled back in time and across realities to prevent himself from ever acquiring powers, but instead just activated them early and created an alternate timeline. Man, talk about being your own worst enemy. He accidentally killed his father and went to prison, and during this time learned to respect the law, even helping the guards during an uprising. When he was released, he had a new outlook on life and named himself Justice, becoming a hero. He has been a member of the New Warriors and later the Avengers, discovering a new way to defeat Ultron and helping them defeat him. His main power is his telekinesis, although he was once a fighter in the UCWF, Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where he was known as Manglin' John Mahoney. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. Black Knight. Dane Whitman is actually the third character to bear the Black Knight name, and he first appeared in The Avengers number 47 in 1967. Nephew to the original Black Knight, he inherited a mystical sword that carried a curse and fought to restore honor to the Black Knight name. He uses a winged horse named Aragorn as his mount, and as an Avenger, helped the team take on Kang the Conqueror. An excellent swordsman with magic senses, he has been a member of many other teams, including the Heroes for Hire and the Ultra Force. He had a 4-issue miniseries in 1990 and was the main character of his own series that was cancelled after a short time. If Black Knight is an Avenger that you have heard of, then good news for you, he'll be appearing in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals in 2021, played by Kit Harington. If you've seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sure you'll agree he's a great choice. Can't wait to see Jon Snow in the MCU. Number 8. Two Gun Kid. In 1948, Marvel released their first ever Western comic book, Two Gun Kid. An expert gunslinger wrongly accused of murder, he spends his life on the run, but does good everywhere he goes. Just him, his 2 6 guns, and his trusty guitar. Marvel had great success with this and went on to create a whole slew of Western themed comics, but I'll bet the kid never thought he would one day be riding alongside men in tights as a member of the Avengers. The kid met the Avengers when they went up against the time-traveling villain Kang in 1870 and got along really well with Hawkeye, so he just joins up and helps them take on Kang. Afterwards, he returns to the 20th century with the Avengers. In the modern era, he works alongside She-Hulk, hoping to become her colleague since she works at a law firm, but quickly realizes he'll never be able to catch up on all the new laws and instead becomes a bounty hunter. He rides around in an awesome jet cycle named Lightning, which he uses to fly around the city. Number 7. Hellcat. Real name Patricia Walker. You might recognize her from Marvel's Netflix shows where she's guest starred, but did you know she was also once an Avenger? Hellcat joined up with the Avengers in 1976, but actually had her own teen romantic comedy series before this called Miss America Magazine in 1944. Similar to Two Gun Kid, this is a popular character that sort of slowly evolved into a superhero. She appears again in 1977 in The Defenders, where she meets the son of Satan, and the two later become married, a husband and wife occult investigation team. She is a well-trained martial artist and gymnast, with wrist-mounted claws and grappling hooks. Surprisingly, she has appeared in 5 different Marvel video games, including LEGO Avengers. Number 6. Moondragon. Heather Douglas was a young girl driving through the desert with her parents when Thanos' spaceship landed on Earth. Not wanting witnesses, he blew up their car, but Heather was thrown from the vehicle and survived. Her father's corpse is later reanimated to create Drax the Destroyer. Thanos' father, Mentor, found her and took her to his homeworld Titan, where she studied the Titan's ways and unlocked her latent psychic potential. However, she becomes influenced by the Dragon of the Moon, and believing she has successfully resisted its influence, takes on the name Moondragon. She was present when the Avengers confronted Korvac, using her powers to see into his mind while they fought. She later joins the Defenders alongside Valkyrie, and discovers she's still being influenced by the Dragon of the Moon. She manages to resist it for real this time, but as they are separated, she begins to die from mutated spores, and the dragon appears again, offering to save her life if she agrees to be its host. She does agree, and then, as an evil dragon, fights against the Defenders until the 4 of them sacrifice themselves to kill both her and the dragon. Number 5. Tigra. Greer Nelson was a costumed vigilante named Cat, who was enhanced by a doctor who gave her cat-like powers tied to her costume. She is later mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid created through a mystical ritual. Her feline physiology grants her a number of superhuman capabilities. In addition to the usual super strength and stuff, she has superhuman senses and a regenerative healing factor. Her teeth and claws are razor sharp and capable of cutting through bone, stone, and even some metals. She wears a cat's head amulet as a talisman for her so she can change back and forth between her feline form. She became a part of the Avengers in issue number 211 and proved herself in battle against the Molecule Man. She eventually moves to San Francisco and becomes friends with Spider-Woman. She also helped out at Avengers Academy after the fall of Norman Osborn. Number 4. Falcon. Also known as Samuel Wilson, Falcon grew up in a tough Harlem neighborhood, and his father was killed trying to stop a fight. His mother later died protecting her children from a mugging, and Sam eventually gets involved with the mob at one point, seeming like he would never become a hero. Red Skull uses the Cosmic Cube to give Sam the ability to telepathically speak with birds, especially a falcon that Wilson names Redwing. He is sent to take on Captain America, but Cap frees Wilson from Red Skull's control, and as Falcon, he becomes Cap's partner, and the two work together for a long time. Black Panther also helps out Falcon by helping to create his harness that allows him to fly. He joins the Avengers between issue 184 and 194, but finds out that he's just been drafted to fill a quota, and resentful of being a token, he quits as soon as he can. Number 3. Firebird. First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 265 in 1981, Bonita Juarez was walking across the desert of New Mexico when a huge ball of fire crashed down into the sand just 10 feet from where she stood. Bathed in extraterrestrial radiation, she later discovers she received fire-based superpowers. She believed the fireball was a manifestation of the American Indian legend of the Firebird, and so makes herself a costume and decides to become a hero with the name Firebird. She helped out the West Coast Avengers in a battle against Master Pandemonium, and later was recruited onto the Avengers during a spiritual journey during which she was going by the name La Espirita. She discovers that her powers were actually from an alien child's failed experiment and not an act of God, and after a brief crisis of faith, returns to the name Firebird. Her and the Rangers worked alongside Kane in Scarlet Spider Volume 2, helping him to battle against a monster made of pure energy. Number 2. Stingray. Walter Newell was an oceanographer and engineer supervising the construction of an underwater city. He designed a unique suit for deep sea exploration, basing the design on manta rays and taking up the name Stingray. He was ordered to investigate Namor, but believed him to be innocent and later allows him to escape. In Avengers Volume 3, he was one of the many heroes who responded to the rallying call, but chose not to remain an Avenger full-time. He later becomes a fully active member of the Avengers when Kang the Conqueror begins to strike all around the Earth. He helped to enlist the help of the Atlanteans in the fight on the waterfront, and was a great asset thanks to his nautical experience. He ultimately leaves the Avengers, but remains a reserve member and still responds to emergency calls. Number 1. Demolition Man. Similar to Justice, D-Man was also once a wrestler in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. Born Dennis Dunphy, he was raised in Detroit and idolized superheroes as a boy. A college football player, hoping to one day be drafted, he accepts an offer from the power broker, hoping he'll get the power he needs to become a professional football player. Unfortunately, he winds up too powerful to safely compete with normal athletes, so the power broker sets him up as a wrestler. After Captain America takes an interest in the power broker, Dennis allies with him. Later, he joins the Avengers informally. He designed and built his own costume, based on Wolverine and Daredevil suits, and he nearly dies in a plane crash, joins the US Army, and at one point joins Wonder Man's Revengers, dedicated to dismantling the Avengers. He even becomes bonded with a symbiote at one point, and is later turned into a vampire to save his life after he becomes mortally wounded.
Number 10, Bob. Hands down the best name for a superhero sidekick, period. We have Bob. Making his first appearance in Cable and Deadpool issue 38, Bob is a former member of the terrorist agency known as Hydra. Hail Hydra. But most importantly, hail Bob. So how did Bob get into Hydra in the first place? What are you doing, Bob? Well, his wife Allison was giving him a hard time for not being able to get a steady job, so he figured he would work for Hydra. Classic. He wasn't a big fan of the organization though, only because they didn't have dental coverage. I mean, fair, not a bad point, Bob. Valid point. Funny enough, Bob made a brief cameo in the 2016 Deadpool movie, where in the final battle of the film, he caught up with him, talking about Bob's wife Gail and her amazing tuna casserole, right before a quick headbutt knockout. But don't worry, Wade dragged Bob off screen to safety, or so we assume.
Number 9, Elsa Bloodstone. I can already hear the fans of Elsa Bloodstone raging in an uproar of that they know Elsa and how dare I put her on this list. And while yes, Elsa Bloodstone does have some very passionate fans, I will add that there are actually a lot of Marvel fans out there who are unfamiliar with her. Trust me, I know some pretty intense fellow comic nerds who have never heard of her until running into her in Marvel Strike Force. I'm looking at you, Dylan. So I thought it might be nice to talk a little bit more about this character who is super awesome, but tends to be less celebrated and not as well known to most. Elsa was born into a legacy of monster hunters. Her father Ulysses was a monster hunter before her, and so it was her destiny to defeat monsters while working alongside the good ones. Let's not forget that the Marvelverse also has a whole other horror and monster aspect to it as well. After all, Blade is also a part of Marvel. Have we ever gotten a Blade and Elsa team up, by the way? That is something I'd love to see. Should have already happened at this point.
Number 8, Jasper Sitwell. He made his comic book debut in 1966 in Strange Tales issue 144, and his cinematic debut in Thor 1. We all remember that agent Natasha Romanoff kicked off the building in Captain America Winter Soldier. That was the big reveal moment for the Falcon. But who was the agent that they were threatening? Well, Jasper Sitwell posed as a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. In reality, he was actually working for Hydra. This dude wasn't close too, like him and Coulson were the ones that got the call about Thor's hammer first landing on Earth. And he was one of the secret masterminds behind Project Insight. Could have been worse though. In the comics, Sitwell is actually Nick Fury's assistant, and at one point temporarily becomes the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sitwell is played by Maximiliano Hernandez in the MCU, so if you want to see him on the big screen, you've got a little bit of catching up to do.
Number 7, Lindsay McCabe. Lindsay is the best friend of Jessica Drew. You maybe never knew that she had? Me personally, I thought Jessica's best friend might be Carol Danvers, and maybe now that might be more true, but throughout the later 70s to the mid 90s in the comics, Lindsay McCabe was it. She and Jessica met while living in New York at a group therapy clinic. Jessica liked Lindsay because she was a tough, strong woman who wasn't afraid of Jessica or intimidated by Jessica's strange powers. Eventually, the two moved to San Francisco together when Lindsay got the opportunity to study theater there. Lindsay herself was an actress. Lindsay would eventually learn Jessica was Spider-Woman and would also spend some time working with Jess when she had her private investigation agency. She would also try to help Wolverine in the disguise of Patch, whom she also knew previously, though did not actually recognize. She didn't know it was Wolverine, thought it was Patch, to save her friend Jessica when she was possessed by the Black Blade, aka the Muramasa Blade.
Number 6, Space Knights. Okay, these guys are awesome, and I hope we get a Space Knights show soon, or in my lifetime at least. They're fairly new to the game, having first appeared in Guardians of Infinity issue 2, only back in 2016. So a long time ago in the Outer Rim, a substance known as Core was discovered. This substance gave a little bit of flair to the Perrin's warriors' weapons. So led by Horn, the warriors saved the planet from slavery. One thing to note about core that's rather important is that if it's sitting too long, it would corrupt the soldiers, so they always have to get a move on. Kind of like if I'm near chocolate milk at any point in my life. It's just eventually going to corrupt me, and then I'm going to have to chug all of it because I have no self-control as a human being. Get it away from me. Go, gone. So as time went on, more and more joined in on the warriors' efforts, and the group came to be known as, you guessed it, the Space Knights.
Number 5. Peepers. Peepers is one of those much lesser known mutants who has been around for quite a long time, but due to his unimpressive power set, pops up a lot less in comparison to others. Similar to Eye-Boy, Peepers' powers all kind of have to do pretty much with his sight or his eyes. A physical mutation made his eyes larger than most, so much so that they kind of protrude outward to an extent. He has enhanced eyesight, X-ray vision, and was sometimes even known to be able to fire optic blasts out of his eyes, similar to Cyclops, but not really on the same level as the X-Men team leader. Peepers' legal name is Peter Quinn, and while I haven't seen him pop up yet in the Dawn of X line, and hey, I've been watching for that, he has made a recent appearance in Marvel's Ravencroft series, where he appears to be working as an orderly or a medical assistant at Ravencroft. Pretty random.
Number 4. Ella Whitby. Making her comic book debut back in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 40, Ella Whitby was the doctor who helped Deadpool escape Crossmore Institution in England. But it wasn't long before she confessed her love for the Merc of the Mouth. Wade, however, didn't share the same feelings. Ella started to become a bit of a stalker, I guess you could say. She confessed her love to him again, only this time not so fashionable, with a homemade Deadpool suit attached to her body. So Deadpool starts to get curious and goes to her house. Turns out she's collected body parts of Deadpool. So Deadpool realizes that she's probably going for the Warden next to make Deadpool happy and all. So he goes to Warden's house, and just as he had expected, she was waiting there to kill the Warden in just the way Deadpool would do it himself. That is, by boiling tea made with ammonium nitrate on the stove with a plastic bag in the oven filling with gas. So after the explosion, Wade went back to her apartment, met up with a very burned Ella, and told her that he loves somebody else. Hashtag Wade the Heartbreaker.
Number 3. Amazing Baby. You might not know Amazing Baby just yet because, well, they're a super new character, but they also exist as a throwback to an older X-Men enemy, the Warwolves. Warwolves were an enemy of the X-Men that were almost shapeshifters. Almost. Their ability allowed them to drain their enemies of their life energy and then basically wear their skins like a suit, disguising themselves as that person. These Warwolves originally hailed from Mojo World and were sentient, wolf-like, metallic-looking creatures. Amazing Baby is a Warwolf pup that the Excalibur team in the Dawn of X line rescued from Cullen Bloodstone. Yes, relation to Elsa, who we talked about earlier. Cullen's her brother. The rescue pup was then given to Rachel Summers, who agreed to look after the little one despite how dangerous the mutants know this pup could grow up to be. She named her pet werewolf Amazing Baby, and you can also see him pop up in the Dawn of X's X Factor series alongside Rachel.
And number 2, Macho Gomez. Making his debut in Deadpool Volume 2, Issue 32, Macho Gomez is said to be the baddest, most feared operator in the galaxy, and his name sure does sound like it. He's a skilled fighter when it comes to shooting. He's got 6 fingers on each hand instead of 5, so he has that extra accuracy, you know? He's got that one little flip-flop over for stability. He's kind of like a Mandalorian bounty hunter in a way. He has the cockiness and the attitude to follow suit as well. When he was hired to assassinate the family of Reginald Harris, he was actually tricked into thinking Deadpool had already done the job before him. So naturally, he was kind of pissed and wanted to get back at him. Now, fighting Deadpool is usually a pretty tough task. So Macho Gomez lost the battle more than once. And after losing a battle to Deadpool, Macho was pushed into an escape pod and sent into the depths of space. Meanwhile, Wade took his place and replaced him at Funzel, even marrying Orkza. That's Deadpool for you, I don't know.
Number 1. Kandra. I love how when Kandra first appeared in the comics, she already came with a ton of backstory and power. The funny part was that although she threw her weight around as this supervillain of sorts in Gambit issue number 1, and was this immortal who had ties to tons of other characters, this was our first time meeting her. What an introduction! During her initial appearance, Kandra was revealed to be the Benefactress, a character who had pitted the Thieves Guild and Assassins Guild of New Orleans against one another for centuries for her own purposes. She is also heavily implied to be a former lover of Gambit's, and we'd come to know her as a member of the often now forgotten Externals, an immortal, often villainous group of mutants who are insanely powerful, and not to be confused with the Eternals, which is a totally different group. And Externals as well cannot die. Well, for the most part. Remember Selene? She was also a part of the externals, but Selene simply became much more popular, so we still know who she is.
Coming in at number 10, Prowler, Hobby Brown. Now, when I mention the Prowler, of course the first thing that comes to your mind is Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales, who played one of the villains in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't seen it, it literally won an Oscar. It's amazing. Go watch it right now after this video. That is one of the best movies, period, not just animated movies, but best movies ever. Yeah, that's it. But I'm talking about Hobby Brown's Prowler. A little bit different. He made his comic book debut back in Amazing Spider-Man 78 in 1969. I like the OG Prowler more. He was a villain and then kind of like a hero, and he has an honest character arc, you know? Like, he was this guy who cleaned windows for a living. In the middle of a shift, this guy gets caught in the middle of a fight with Daredevil and Stiltman. So after that incident, he was inspired to make his own suit and secret identity to go along with it. So he made himself wrist and ankle bracelets to hold cleaning fluid and gave himself boots and claws to help climb. Not a bad idea at all. Kind of feels like you just want to be a villain. I don't know. That's a really weird way of doing it. Get a camelback, put it in there, then spray the stuff. I don't know, just an idea. So after he lost his job, however, it became clear what his next step had to be. Now I say had to because this was an honest guy who didn't want to hurt anybody. He didn't want to be a villain. He just needed to get by. Spider-Man gave him warnings too, like he didn't really crack down on him too hard. He knew that Hobby Brown wasn't a bad guy, and that's what I love about him. We have Aaron Davis in the MCU, played by Childish Gambino, and he's an arms dealer, so I'm hoping, as you guys are probably as well, that he makes a similar character arc becoming the Prowler, whilst also introducing Miles Morales in that MCU. And I feel like we're honestly days away from finding out who's playing Miles in the MCU, because they're filming, I think right now, the new Spider-Man. So comment down below who you think is going to be casted, and then once it's out, we can come back and check the comments and see who's right and who's wrong. And we'll shout out only the wrong people. We'll shame you. Shame. He also looks a lot like Spawn. I don't know, just saying. Number 9, the Orb. This guy is quite fun, and believe it or not, he's been clearly referenced in the MCU. You just gotta keep an eye out for it. Puns, here we go. There's so many puns in this thing, by the way, it's gonna get nuts. These puns are wild. Yeah, he's got an eyeball for a head, and no, I'm not joking. Making his first appearance in Ghost Rider Volume 6, Issue 26, the Orb is, well, yeah, look at him. He was born with a head that was a giant eye, and if that's not already the coolest thing ever, I don't really know what is. His parents abandoned him at a young age because, well, of course they did. I mean, it would be quite the scene during childbirth. Oh, it's crowning. Yep, I think I see the head. Nope, it sees me. It's definitely a big eyeball. We gotta go. So naturally, he was made fun of. He couldn't speak either. I mean, he just made squishy noises. His massive eyeball head had powers. I mean, I hope, or else this guy's life is just a horror film. He can blast people with this red energy beam that shoots out of his eye thing. And he can even tell when somebody's thinking about him, which would probably be a lot of the time, considering that's what he looks like. So yeah, he was for sure referenced in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Right at the start of the movie when Scott is playing with Cassie, she has to use this retinal scanner thing. It's like in the cardboard fort. And she puts on this paper plate mask that looks like a big eye. And if that's not a reference to the Orb, it's a reference to Mike Wachowski. So one or the other, I got it. Number 8, Jack-O-Lantern. 'Tis the season, so it's only fair to include Jack-O-Lantern. Making his debut in Captain America issue 396, he's a sick villain. Jason Macendale, who started off as a mercenary but was deemed too violent, so naturally after his departure he donned a new look and gave himself a fancy new evil nickname to go along with it, Jack-O-Lantern. I love his look, it's very Headless Horseman type, I like it. He was referred to as Mad Jack in Spectacular Spider-Man in the 90s, and he actually was Mysterio. This whole time? No, just in that iteration. So from 1996 and onward, starting with Spectacular Spider-Man 241, that's when Norman Osborn comes up to Daniel Beckert and pitches his new alter ego, Mad Jack. He shows him the new pumpkin head, very nice touch, elegant, nice and terrifying too. The fancy glider, the pumpkin bombs, the blasters. I can see a live action Jack-O-Lantern happening, for real. I mean, we're pretty much there with all the gliders and the gear. Once you throw on a Jack-O-Lantern into the picture, that's it, it's pretty much done. We have Hobgoblin, we have all those gliders. I think it's time for Jack-O-Lantern. Hashtag Mad Jack. Number 7, Jim Jaspers. He made his debut in Daredevil's number 7 in 1983. This dude's pretty wild. He started off as a British politician who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and then he was a leader of the Conservative Party, okay? So he was known for his anti-superhero stance. I mean, Of course, your name is Jim Jaspers. You already sound like an annoying character, brother. Jim Jaspers. Jim Jaspers over here, sir. He didn't like soups because he wanted to keep Britain safe. Fair? I mean, you got a point. So of course, many people agreed with him and he won the general election. Bam, done. But Jim Jaspers had some little Jim Jaspers tricks up his sleeves. He actually was a mutant with reality warping powers. Oh, these type of guys scare me. Like one bad day and then it's over. Like, they're crazy. I don't like those guys. So he's representing Haslop West and even gets knighted by Queen Elizabeth. So he creates this strike team whose job it is to gather up all the superheroes. And the slogan and all the posters says, "In your hearts, you know he's right. In our hearts, way to go after our souls." The best part of the capabilities of Jim Jaspers takes place in the Marvel UK storyline, Crooked World. So if you want to see the reality warping Jim Jaspers is capable of in full force, you gotta check that out yourselves. Also, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Jim Jaspers will be introduced in WandaVision and will be a secret villain working quietly. I'm calling it now. Check the date, that's it. Number 6, Hyperion. The Superman of the Marvel Universe, basically. I mean, making his first appearance in Avengers issue 69 back in 1969. Nice. That's right, so when the Grandmaster traveled to Earth 712, he challenged Scarlet Supreme to a contest. So each fighter gets to kind of pick their own team. So the Grandmaster won using the Squadron Supreme. So he changed 3 people over to become Nighthawk, Dr. Spectrum, and the Wizard. Now of course, he still needed that Hyperion spot, so he created him out of extra dimensional matter. Spirit fingers. Even throwing in the artificial memories to go along with it. He was made to think he was Zibron, this space explorer from Yttrium, a planet from one of the microverses. Named after the Titan of Greek mythology, Hyperion actually went toe-to-toe with Thor. But, you know, with Thor being Thor and all, Hyperion ended up losing. The hammer was too much to handle. Another pun. Kind of. That was, we're pushing. Hyperion was shrunk, depowered, and imprisoned by Thor into this tiny glass globe. Don't worry though, Nebulon got him out. He's good. Number 5, Lyra. We go now to Earth 8009, beginning with Hulk Raging Thunder issue 1. We find Lyra Walters, or more commonly referred to as Savage She-Hulk. So she's from Earth 8009 in the 23rd century, and then at that time the Earth was split into 2 different factions. The guys' factions were like warriors, you know, they just looked up to heroes like Wolverine, just manly men, I guess, being men. And the women came together under the United Sisterhood Republic, and they were outgunned and outmanned. Literally. So Thundra got sent to Earth 616 where she met that Earth's Hulk and then had a baby. And then Lyra actually gets stronger when she's calm, which is of course not common when it comes to our green giants. That'd be amazing to see though. It just cuts to like Lyra reading a book and everyone's like, man, she's wild right now. Look at how strong she is. She's like just jacked while she's reading 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Green! This is great, this is awesome. She's also able to tap into gamma sight, which means she basically can see the flow of gamma radiation. She's one with the gamma. Like all over the world too, not like within her personal range. She taps into all of it. So she becomes more skilled in this state because she sees everything and knows the next move. If she becomes angry, however, she will actually become weaker. So it's a fun little game of opposites. But at her weakest, she's still as strong as Spider-Man, so doesn't quite say a lot when you say the word weakness. Number 4, Songbird. Also known as Melissa Gold, Songbird made her comic debut in 1997 in the Incredible Hulk issue 449. She ran away from her parents at a young age, of course, and whilst developing a hard knock life attitude, she ended up becoming a professional wrestler, just like the Spider-Gwen version of She-Hulk, funny enough. That would be a fun crossover, I don't know. She gave herself the stage name Screaming Mimi and joined the wrestling crew, the Grapplers. Now, in Marvel's television run, they could for sure bring this character in, it can happen, and it would be a blast. So the Grapplers were straight killing it, but they weren't making the same amount of money as the male wrestlers. That rings a familiar bell, huh? Doesn't it? So they took on a new job with the Roxxon Oil Company. Now of course the mission failed because Quasar came in and had to save the day. Melissa was given vocal cord implants that provided her with acoustic kinetics. Hence the name Screaming Mimi. You figured it out. She can make all these crazy weapons with just her voice and even has the ability to craft herself wings and fly. Whenever I scream, my voice just cracks. Like, a lot. Number 3, Swarm. Okay, this next guy is an absolute unit. Fritz von Meyer made his debut in Champions issue 14 back in 1977. And as you can probably guess by his name, he's made of 1,000 bees. And as you can probably guess by his actual name, he's also a Nazi scientist. He used looted gold to pay for all of his projects. He's this Nazi beekeeper. I mean, what a character. One day he found a beehive that was quite different, to say the least. So Fritz made a device that would help reawaken these mysterious bees, which he thought were the end result of a mutation with a nearby fallen meteorite. So these bees ended up attacking and killing Fritz. Not the Nazi beekeeper Fritz! As you would think, his consciousness was spread out through all of these bees, and now you have this monstrosity bee guy. Just a man made of bees. I don't care what criminal you are, if you see a guy made out of bees, I'm tapping out, that's it. Like, there's no fight. If I was robbing a bank and I heard like behind me, there's no chance any amount of money is worth that pain. Puns are killing it. Number 2, leapfrog. Yep, you heard me. Okay, picture this. What if when Cap said Avengers Assemble and Avengers Endgame, and it just panned through all those characters, there was just like a frog just chilling there, like a frog guy, just standing like, yeah, let's mess him up. All wet and frog-like. Vincent Patilio, of course, was an inventor. I mean, who else gets to this point in their life? Must be a wacky inventor. Making his first comic book debut in Daredevil issue 25 in 1967, he was a loser. In his own words, he said this, not me. He invented things, but nothing was sticking. Again with the puns, oh my god, this guy's wild. So until one day, he created these powerful leaping coils. And after that, he decided to, well, do crimes, because of course. And in one of his first villainous outings, he went to an airport and started leaping around and prevented planes from taking off. That's the worst villain move right there. Delaying my trip to Fiji? No sir, leapy man. This guy would be a great villain for a TV show. I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier could bring him in for like one episode. They have Batroc the Leaper coming back, so let's just do like a team of leapers. The entire episode is just Sebastian Stan looking around like. And lastly, coming in at number 1, Gamecock. Yep, I said that. Carlos Cabrera made his comic book debut in Captain America issue 183. He was a small villain who crossed paths with Steve Rogers a couple of times. And as far as powers go, he has none. But he dresses like this, so one would only assume he's the coolest, strongest, baddest dude in the game. He is, however, a great fighter. And I see how the inspiration came about. Cockfighting, the sharp claws, he's a great fighter. He also sports the claws on his feet and his hands. And if you think this guy wasn't already insane enough, he has a crew that he rolls with who also dresses up like chickens. I feel like they could use this character in an Easter egg easily. I mean, just having any sporting event with a chicken mascot and his name could be Carlos. Boom, then all of us would be like, that's the chicken thug, I know that guy. Maybe he could even call his gang the Chicken Nuggets. And whenever he wants to leave, he like snaps his fingers and he goes, let's dip. And the other chicken dudes are like, yeah, let's go rob somebody. I could use an extra buck. Yeah, that's like 7 puns. I'll leave now, that's fair, that's fair.
Number 10, Karma. Karma is a mutant with very specific powers, so it should surprise no one that she is part of the New Mutants team. I actually love the New Mutants for this reason. A lot of their members tend to be forgotten and yet are super powerful when their abilities are properly utilized. Xian Koiman possesses limited telepathic abilities, but can have a strong sense of sort of psychic projection. Karma can emit a wave of energy that disables her target's consciousness, allowing her to take over control of their body, experiencing what they experience as though she were actually in their body, sensing what they taste, hear, smell, see, and feel. Those she controls will awaken unaware, afterwards experiencing this possession as if they had just been in a dream and basically had been sleepwalking. She can also do this on a mass scale, possessing multiple people, though she must overcome many challenges in order to fluidly control multiple people at once. Number 9, Hijack. Hijack is David Bond, a technopath mutant who can use his abilities to telepathically control any vehicle. He's used his powers to control massive sentinels and even control an entire helicarrier. The rule seems to be if you can steer it, fly it, or drive it, Hijack can control it. Although it has been implied that the vehicle in question likely needs to have some kind of mechanical makeup, so sailboats are probably not something Bond could manipulate. Unless you had a sailboat that also had an engine, which I think is a thing now. I don't think all sailboats are just sails. Still, in a world where we are surrounded by tech and tons of engine-powered vehicles, David Bond's abilities are pretty powerful. Alas, he has only appeared in less than 50 issues of comics. Someone tell me, where is David Bond now? Where is he on Krakoa? Is he there? I want to see him. Number 8. Summoner. Summoner is a new mutant whose name also signifies the type of mutant that they are. They are the child of Apocalypse's first horsemen of war. Arakko, the landmass itself, was drawn to Krakoa and Krakoa to it. The two fused together to increase the size of the land overall, although Arakko is not yet considered safe and is basically known as kind of the monster territory part of Krakoa. I mean, technically it still isn't Krakoa, but they're attached now, so they are each other. Summoner's abilities allow them to summon the dark beasts of Arakko. We don't know too much about them yet because they've only been in a few issues, but what we do know is that they can withstand the blast of one of Cable's thermal grenades, his last one in fact, without taking virtually any damage. So overall, they seem like they're going to be pretty crazy and powerful. X of Swords, I'm assuming we're going to see more about them. Number 7. Dust. Dust is Soraya Kadir. She was enslaved as a child but freed by the X-Men. Originally, she did not want to reveal herself to the mutants and hid herself by turning into scattered sand. When Jean Grey sensed her presence and encouraged Soraya to reveal and introduce herself, she did so by referring to herself as Turab, which is Arabic for dust. She can turn herself into dust and manipulate her body to move at high speeds, causing her to become a deadly sandstorm to her enemies. As sand particles, she can also enter the bodies of other people, causing internal damage. Dust is also resistant to magic and telepathic manipulation or detection while in her sand form. Dust is another person that I feel like we never see enough of in the comics. Someone bring back Dust. Number 6. Layla Miller. Layla's abilities, skills, and powers tend to be pretty specific, which means that she might not inherently seem powerful to readers. Layla has been shown to be able to reanimate beings, heal wounds, and appears to be immune to reality warping. She also has a lot of knowledge about her own future life and the events surrounding it, as she spent time in the future and then returned and uploaded all she had learned into her younger self when she returned to that Layla's present, which I guess was technically her past. Her vast knowledge often comes in handy and is what helped the mutants to figure out who was really after the baby mutant Messiah during the events of Messiah Complex. Her own knowledge has also technically helped her in gaining the knowledge that she has needed to have in order to gain it, if that makes any sense. Timey-wimey stuff. Number 5. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are twin siblings born to mutant parents. Their powers as such manifested when they were younger than most. They haven't been in a ton of comics, most about probably 11 issues, but they have been shown to be pretty deadly and powerful even as children, both in Extermination and recently in the newest run of New Mutants. Maxime can influence others' emotions while Manon can alter someone's memories, or recall their memories past. When combined, their powers actually allow them to manipulate the minds of others to the point that they can easily control them, shaping their victims into whatever they like them to be and making them do whatever they want. In issues 3 and 4 of New Mutants, both Maxime and Manon were captured along with Armor, Glob, Angel Salvador, Beak, and the couple's children, but managed to escape. Manon and Maxime helped to free the rest of the group by distracting their captives, manipulating one of them into killing the other. Number 4. Mirage. You might not recognize her mutant name, but if you've seen the New Mutants film, or you are familiar with the New Mutants at all, Mirage will be someone that you maybe know. Mirage is actually Daniel Moonstar. Standard X-Men fans may be less familiar with Dani, but she has also been one of the X-Men, and she is known for her affiliation with the New Mutants crew and all the female defenders who are also known as Valkyror. Dani herself became a Valkyrie when the New Mutants were kidnapped by Amora the Enchantress and taken to Asgard, so she doesn't just have her mutant power of illusion creation and telepathy, which originally she could only use to recreate the fear of others, but she also has some of the powers granted to Valkyries. Oh, and she can make cool psionic arrows too. Number 3. Strong Guy. Strong Guy has similar powers to another mutant we talked about on part 1 of this list. His abilities allow him to use kinetic energy to augment his strength, increasing it. However, he cannot hold the energy for long as it could severely harm him, distort his physical form, or even kill him. Still, even with the rule that he must expel any absorbed energy within less than 2 minutes of absorption, he is pretty powerful, using his powers to safely lift up to around 100 tons. Strong Guy's real name is Guido Carosella, and he first appeared in the original New Mutant series in issue 29. Number 2. Mutant with no name. In the alternate reality belonging to the Ultimate Universe of 1610, we got a story that introduced us to a mutant who had no name. This mutant's powers were so devastating that we were not permitted the time to get to know him. His powers had only just manifested, but they were so deadly that they caused the deaths of over 200 people in his hometown, including his parents and his girlfriend at high school, with the deaths being almost instantaneous. But there was no snapping involved. It wasn't a Thanos thing. No Infinity Gauntlets. His mutant power was basically to kill everything around him, radiating toxins and poisons that basically vaporize organic tissue. He was so dangerous, powerful, and deadly that Wolverine was sent to eliminate him, as the young mutant's existence posed too much of a threat to the mutant image, as well as both humans and mutants alike, just in general. Number 1. Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy is one of the strongest, most random mutants who now belongs to the alternate timeline of Earth 14923, because he was just too powerful to basically continue to exist. Like many of the most epic mutants, he had reality warping powers and was additionally considered Omega level in terms of his ability. Matthew's powers unfortunately were often tied to his emotions, which proved problematic and often resulted in massively destructive outbursts of energy. In the end, Tempest traveled back in time and, with help from Professor X of the past, was able to prevent Matthew's parents from ever meeting, meaning that he was never born. Number 10. Deadly Genesis. We can talk about different X-Men and mutant teams here, but I'd also like to touch on some of the rosters as well that you may have forgotten about. This one might be due to selective memory loss, or it could just be because you haven't read the story yet. We are talking here about the X-Men Deadly Genesis limited series, which revealed the next team sent into Krakoa after the X-Men team we know went missing. This team wasn't necessarily a bad one at all. In fact, all of these mutants are kind of super powerful, but they were all basically introduced in this short series, which didn't really help to make us care as much about them as we could have. All in all, this story just had a very early 2000s feel to it. Not that that's a bad thing. The Deadly Genesis X-Men team were a group of kids that Moira McTaggart was trying to help out. She didn't even really see them as students, and then Charles recruited them and turned them into X-Men. The team consisted of Sway, Petra, Vulcan, and Darwin, who have all recently reappeared in the Dawn of X line, in case you were wondering where they made their first appearance. Number 9. Xavier's Security Enforcers. One that we might forget about every now and then is the mutant team that Bishop originally belonged to from the alternate dystopian future that he hails from. I believe this Earth is 1191, but I could be mistaken on that. Didn't even write down my Earth number. Bothers me. This mutant team is known as the XSE, which stands for Xavier's Security Enforcers. If you know Bishop well and you're a big fan, you likely know this team well, but for those who are new to the character, you might not know about this group of enforcers. The point of the team that Bishop was part of was to preserve the long-dead Professor Charles Xavier's dream, where mutants and humans could exist in harmony, living peacefully together. Bishop has even been known to wield specific future equipment, which he got from XSE, although we haven't seen them in a while. All members of the team wear their mutant tattoo brands like a badge of honor, and the members have included Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop's sister Shard, among others over the years. Before we hop into our number 8 spot, I just want to thank all of you for being here and give you a quick reminder to click that like if you are enjoying this video. It really does help us out. Number 8. Nasty Boys. You might remember the original villainous Marauders team, but do you remember Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys? Don't worry if you have, because I will never let you forget. Well, both the Marauders and Nasty Boys teams are villainous teams. I couldn't have an obscure mutant team list and not seize the opportunity to remind you all of the Nasty Boys, so here we are. I also just love this name for the team. I personally always read Mr. Sinister with like the most outlandish, flamboyant, yet manipulative pseudo-English accent, so for me it's very fitting that he decided to name his team this. Nasty Boys, so perfect. It fits perfectly with the voice that I have for him in my mind. The Nasty Boys were the team that came after the Marauders. Instead of Gambit being involved in the team, Multiple Man was the generally heroic mutant who got involved. Originally, the team saw Ruckus as leader, with Slab, Gorgeous George, Ramrod, and Hairbag making up the roster. Gorgeous George even resurfaced in Dawn of X more recently. Yay! I might be the only one, but I'm still kinda hoping that the Nasty Boys as well will make a return. Bring them back. Bring them back. Number 7. Outback. When it comes to X-Men rosters as teams, one of the best but shortest running roster is the Outback team. This era for the X-Men team lasted less than 25 issues, but was still so good that people still talk about it today. Now, if you missed this one and you've never heard of it, it's one that you actually probably should read. Not one of my silly points, more one of my serious and beloved forgotten teams on this list. The team started off in issue 229 of Uncanny X-Men, with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Dazzler, Longshot, Havoc, and Psylocke on it. We'd also see Jubilee introduced during this roster's time together. The Outback team is noted as being one of the best rosters for the X-Men when it comes to having a group who truly feel like outsiders. Also, you get to enjoy the Inferno story in this run, which is bizarre and magical, so you're welcome for that. Number 6. X-Corps. No, I'm not talking about the X Corporation, which has yet to come out, but is still coming our way. Thank goodness. I thought that book was going to be firmly cancelled, but fortunately it has been revived. I'm so ready for X Corporation, let's go. When we talk about X-Corps, we are talking about Banshee's team. He formed this team after Generation X disbanded, and most of the team were composed of that era of mutants. This team was made up of former villains turned heroes and was created to act as a police force basically for the mutant community. Joining Banshee were the Blob, Avalanche, Fever Pitch, Jubilee, Husk, and M, aka Monet. The X-Men team actually did not approve of this team's creation and actually attempted to get Banshee to disband it. In the end, Mystique infiltrated the team and liberated its members, especially the villains, who were being manipulated into behaving heroically by Mastermind under Banshee's orders. Number 5. Extreme X-Men. This X-Men roster marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as the leader, woohoo, which you know I'm all about. The original Extreme X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. As you do when you're on an X team. Number 4. Generation Hope. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants including Hope herself, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was a search and rescue group who were brought together as they were acknowledged as being 4 of the 5 lights on Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants. The 5th light was what they sought and kind of why they came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would eventually join the team, although originally would be antagonist. Number 3. X-People. You probably forgot about this team just because their name is, well, super forgettable, but they are actually from a very memorable alternate universe, the MC2, or also known as Alternate Earth 982. This Earth is the home of the beloved Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, now known as Spider-Woman. But you know what's not so memorable from that universe? Their version of the X-Men. I mean, I get that X-People is meant to be gender neutral, more inclusive, but is that really the best name they could come up with? There has to be something that isn't X-Men that is better than that. I mean, I know there is because we have dozens of other X teams with the letter X in them that are way more catchy than X-People. Because of the Earth it is set in, X-People is a team of originally younger mutants who are now older and taking on the role of leaders, mentors, and teachers. Actually, here Jubilee is the team leader, with her core team roster including Simeon, Angry Eagle, Torque, and Spanner. Number 2. Factor 3. Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. This is another villainous team composed of mutants but led by an alien known as Mutant Master. You might not remember it because it was only around for a few issues and also first appeared way early on in X-Men issue 28 back in 1967. This team popped up a few times and would often force mutants into doing their bidding, often mind-controlling Banshee to attempt to kidnap or help kidnap Professor X. What a wacky time it was. Fortunately, in issue 39, Factor 3 was defeated for good and hasn't bothered the X-Men since. So we haven't seen them for a really long time. Number 1. Lightning Force. This X-Men team comes to us admittedly from an alternate reality, which might be why you've never heard of it before. But once you learn about them, you'll likely wish they had remained forgotten. Lightning Force is an X-Men team that we come across in the Exiles, who themselves belong to Earth 597. They are basically the alternate Excalibur team from their reality, a reality where the Axis won World War II. Think you know where we're going with this. Their roster is almost as surprising as the whole idea for this team. We have Herr Xavier, who helped to create the team through experimenting on them. Yikes. And leading the team, we have Hauptmann England, aka Captain Britain, with Mangog, aka Gloriana, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler. Also, if you were wondering, yes, Kitty Pryde is still Jewish in this reality, which makes her character's history here pretty dark. Number 10. All-Female X-Men. Oddly enough, this book didn't do as hot as expected, despite the fact that it was an awesome powerhouse team composed of all ladies. This team was first introduced in 2013's X-Men series in issue number 1, as one of the main X-Men teams, and the series was part of the Marvel Now event. The team featured Kitty Pryde, Rogue, Rachel Summers, Jubilee, and Psylocke, with Storm as the leader. This team was the first in the history of the X-Men to be an all-female team with its own book. So while it was not a commercial success, it's still an important part of X-Men history to be noted for sure. Number 9. Chuck Austin's Uncanny X-Men. At least I kind of hope you've never heard of this one, because if you have, you probably just forgot about it after years of trying, and now I'm traumatizing you by bringing it back up. This is the team that featured Stacy X. Yeah. I like Stacy X, but I can also see why her character and this run were super problematic. Austin's run on Uncanny X-Men began in issue 410 and ran till issue 443. The problem here wasn't so much to do with the members of the team as the subject matter. Many people feel that Austin's run was hypersexual, and he also gave us the revelation that Nightcrawler's dad was Azazel, which honestly isn't that terrible, but then he also gave us the weird Draco storyline with the X-Men versus the Neophem, which was something. It was a time. All in, this was definitely a controversial run, especially considering the relationship between Husk and Angel. The team was made up of Archangel, Beast, Iceman, Nightcrawler, Stacy X, Wolverine, and Professor X himself to start, but it would later on feature Husk, Polaris, Northstar, Juggernaut, and Havoc. Before we move on to this next spot, just a quick little reminder to click that like button if you haven't already, it really does help us out. Number 8. Children of the Atom. You might not have heard of this one because it isn't even out yet, but this is one of the new teams and books that we had expected to see earlier this year, but due to the global pandemic was delayed and is now delayed again. Originally it was moved to January of 2021, but now we aren't expected to see it till April of 2021. Boy, that is a long wait. But just because they aren't around yet doesn't mean we can't talk about them. And if you haven't heard of this team yet, you might want to keep your eye out for when their book is released. Children of the Atom is a team of new teen mutants who are basically X-Men superfans and are trained by these very famous original mutants. Technically, the X-Men team was never meant to exist in Krakoa, as was just revealed recently in the comics, despite them having their own book as part of the Dawn of X line. I know, it's a little confusing. So it'll be interesting to see how the Children of the Atom, who are being advertised as kind of X-Men sidekicks, fit in exactly. In a world where, you know, there's not really supposed to be X-Men? Well, we have yet to meet the members of this team. We do know some of them not only have similar costumes to the classic X-Men, but also have similar powers. Number 7. Hellions. No, not that Hellions. This Hellions. In fact, Empath's look in the new Hellions was a throwback to the original Hellions team outfits. Empath was also an original member of the team. Before we saw the team revived in Dawn of X, they were Emma Frost's team. Basically her version of a teenage mutant team similar to, well, the New Mutants. We're also a teenage mutant team. Every time I say teenage mutant team, I just want to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that's not what we're talking about. Although they are also a teenage mutant team. In comparison to the new Hellions, these Hellions were not as crazy, but were somewhat troublemakers, who had an ongoing, sometimes friendly rivalry with the New Mutants themselves. The team consisted of Empath, Beef, Bevatron, Cat's Eye, Roulette, Taro, Thunderbird, Jetstream, and Firestart. The team was first introduced in New Mutants issue number 16 in the 1980s and was disbanded in 2009 9 in the comics after most of them were basically slaughtered, victims of a surprise attack. The team has returned since, but the new Hellions team only shares one member of the original roster, Empath. Number 6. X Corporation. Many people may have forgotten the existence of X Corporation since the organization was destroyed and became defunct back in the early 2000s, but they are coming back, so it's a pretty good time to remind everyone of their existence. Reminder, X Corp is still a thing. This actually just happened in the comics during the Empire event when we saw for certain that Xavier had revived the X Corp and that Monet and Angel seem to be running this branch of mutant affairs. X Corp in the past has been a non-for-profit organization working to help mutants in their fight for rights, in less bold ways than what the X-Men are usually up to. It also provided a place of refuge for mutants who needed it, until the global organization had their various branches targeted and blown up around the globe following the events of M-Day. X-Corp will be getting their own book in the Dawn of X line, which I am way too excited about. I just want to see Angel get a moment in the spotlight, you know? Many believe the book to have been cancelled, but Jonathan Hickman actually confirmed early in December that it is still very much a go. Number 5. X-Men The End. In this series, we saw a bunch of teams kind of come together, ending in one big one, and Chris Claremont's The End. I like this X-Men team as well because although she died pretty early on in terms of her appearance here, we also get a shout out at least to Dust. And Dust is such an underrated X-Men in my opinion. This comic also introduces us to the future daughter of Bishop and Deathbird, Aaliyah Bishop. The final X-Men team features Kitty Pryde, Wolfsbane, Karma, Northstar, Dust, Martha Johansson aka No Girl, the Cuckoos, Cyclops, and a subgroup known as the Heavy Hitters, which features Wither, Frenzy, Polaris, Juggernaut, and Kid Colossus. Number 4. The Upstarts. Speaking of young mutant teams that are lesser known like the Hellions, we also have their straight up not friendly at all rivals, the Upstarts. The Upstarts were definitely a more villainous crew in comparison to the Hellions, just in general, as their whole goal was to basically kill mutants. The Upstarts were a mutant team created by Selene, the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. She put the team together in order to test the members, getting them to compete for points which would be awarded whenever they killed mutants, based on the mutants' power set. Originally, the young group of mutants involved were unnamed and were promised that whoever got the most points would win a prize, which remained a mystery pretty much through all of the comics that they were featured in. I bet it's cake, and I bet it's a lie. Although I think it was also mentioned at one point somewhere that it was immortality, so in case you were wondering, for realsies. Number 3. Battle of the Atom Future X-Men. While everyone might focus on the Battle of the Atom Future Brotherhood team, as Race has a tendency to steal the show, plus My Girl Zorn Jean, and also featuring Molly Hayes, people tend to forget about the awesomeness that was the Future X-Men team. The real X-Men team. This team featured a much more skilled Iceman, who now was known as Ice Wizard, Wiccan, who had become Sorcerer Supreme, Chimera, who is believed to be Storm's daughter that she had with Black Panther, Shogo, Jubilee's son, known as Sentinel X, Colossus armed with Magic Soul Sword, Kid Omega as Phoenix, and Jubilee as Wolverine. Number 2. Extreme Sanctions Executive, the other XSE. This team also spiraled out of the team that we talked about previously on part 1 of this list, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctions Executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, this team is also like a military police force meant to maintain and in some cases enforce peace is kept between mutants and humans. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of her X-Men, making this team another government-sanctioned mutant team, like X-Factor was, and still one of the first of those types of teams. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers is on every team, I love it, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. Number 1. X-Animals. If you're an intense X-Men fan, you may be familiar with Mojo's X-Babies, but are you familiar with his other attempts at recreating or recasting Marvel's 616 X-Men after they were believed dead? One such team that attempted to step in was the X-Animals. This was a team of, well, animals, who each took on the role of a different mutant member of the X-Men. We've got a skunk standing in for Rogue, a bulldog for Wolverine, a pig for Dazzler, a rabbit as Havoc, a cat for our Storm, which I kinda love, a bird, possibly a hawk as Longshot, an otter as Psylocke, and a gorilla as Colossus. Sadly, this team was not acceptable as a replacement in Mojo's opinion, and he got rid of them. But I'd love to see them return at some point, if that's possible.
Number 10, Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the State Home of Foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day just after Decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X Factor, number 30. Number 9, Tusk. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. Tusk has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. Tusk served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until Strife overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 8, Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean hey, that's not the worst thing, it lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Empath to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7, Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot, but that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly, though, this escape wasn't permanent, as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought, though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men, number 300. Number 6. Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under Strife after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended Strife's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After Strife's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders to survive the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders, including Barrage, embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out starting with 1991's X Factor, number 65. Number 5. Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men, number 249. Number 4. Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the Legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3. The Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X-Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris, so that they couldn't remerge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly killed by the upstarts. Check out these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. Forearm. Michael McCain, aka Forearm, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called Forearm for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, you know, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of Strife was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, Forearm left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, Forearm was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give a story read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denty was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's Underground, who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denty quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993.
Number 10, Spiders-Man. Yeah, instead of Spider-Man, we have Spiders-Man. And it's exactly what you thought. He's a guy made of spiders, and it's an absolute nightmare. Now, of course, I have to kick this list off with him. He showed up in the comics for the first time with Spider-Geddon issue 3. Okay, right off the bat, look at him on the cover. Honestly, I don't think I'd open this. He looks like he's being ripped apart and spiders are pouring out. It's kind of the grossest thing ever. And even typing this up, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get this done with at 10. I don't want to look at this anymore. So it's a super fun comic. We have a bunch of Peter Parkers crossing paths, interacting with each other, and it's a blast. So they're all sitting together, and then we start to meet the others, and in tiny letters, we see the introduction to Spiders-Man. Yeah, he's constructed of thousands of tiny little spiders that believe they are also Peter Parker. Every time this guy shows up, I feel itchy. I feel like there's spiders like in my shirt. I can't even read what he's saying. I'm too busy like smacking my hat to make sure there's no bugs in it, you know? Like it's just, ugh. Every hair that touches my neck, I want to freak out. His homeworld on Earth 11580, he got his powers originally during a tour of Horizon Labs, where he fell into a hive of radioactive spiders and was seemingly devoured, becoming this hive-minded monstrosity man spider. And that's about all I'll say about them, because I'm probably gonna throw up if I say anything else. And before we continue on with our list of wild alternate Spider-Men, if you guys could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, it would be great. It's really helpful for the channel. And if we get enough likes, I will eat this Jurassic Park poster. I'm just kidding. You guys are the best, thank you so much. Now back to the list. Number 9, Spider-Man 1602. Yes, okay, the Marvel 1602 series brought to us from the minds of Neil Gaiman introduced us to Peter Parquois, also referred to as the Spider. He was raised by his Scottish uncle Benjamin, of course, and then one year on his birthday, like Harry Potter, he got a visit from Sir Nicholas Fury because he wanted Peter to enter in his secret little service, so he was like his new assistant. It's amazing because he spends quite a bit of time with no powers at all in this book until like the end of the story where he gets bitten by a spider and then he gets the powers we're all familiar with. Then in 1602 New World issue 4, we see him again, this time referred to as just the Spider instead of Peter Parquois. Number 8, Ashley Barton. Coming all the way from Earth 807-128, making her first debut in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 67, she's from the Old Man Logan timeline where she's the daughter of Tanya. Tanya is Peter's youngest daughter at this point, years down the line, and she's also Hawkeye's third ex-wife at this point too. Apparently she's got a great sense of humor as well, says Hawkeye. Then a few pages later we meet Ashley Parker. And Ultron is the only father she really had growing up. How messed up is that? Yeah, because Hawkeye left when she was only 3 years old. I mean, pretty sweet though to have your dad being Hawkeye and then having your grandfather being Peter Parker. So when she's being rescued by Hawkeye, she tells him 31 inches to the left of her voice, and then bam, just like that, no more bad guy. In fact, Ashley takes care of quite a few bad guys in that issue. Number 7, Spider-Girl. Anya Corazon. She made her debut in Amazing Fantasy Volume 2, Issue 1, when she saw her friend being bullied, so she decided to step in, all without powers, by the way, just being a decent human being, so already I'm a fan. So she backs up her friend, they fight a little bit, and then later on she sees what she suspects is a shooting star in the sky. And she heads towards its direction hoping that it's a good omen. Well, it turns out not to be a good omen, but rather it's the Sisterhood of the Wasp as they were attempting to kill a man. But Anya jumped in front of the attack because she's a great person. So while she was bleeding to death, this man, Miguel, was the sorcerer of the Spider Society. So he transferred some of his powers into her in order to save her life. Now this caused her to get the spider-shaped tattoo, it just appeared, and then enhanced strength and agility, but she also grows this blue exoskeleton, which is super cool. She also rocks the big goggles too, and then no sleeves, and of course, fingerless gloves because she knows what's up. And she also has camouflage abilities as well, and the best part, she's super flexible, kind of like Mr. Fantastic. She just stretches her body out. Not too shabby at all. Number 6, Six-Armed Spider-Man. This one's actually very similar to our usual Spider-Man, only a little different, in which ways you would guess. He's got 6 arms. Why, you ask? Well, that's what happens when you ingest a chemical that's meant to neutralize your power. Sometimes these things don't go well, as seen in every comic book. So it doesn't go as planned, so he grows 4 extra arms, having 6 in total. Quick math for you. The only cure to save this Spider-Man is in Michael Morbius's blood. He first appears in What If Volume 2, Issue 42, in a book titled What If Spider-Man Had Kept His 6 Arms. So the cure to getting rid of the arms was in Morbius's blood, but he gets eaten by a shark here, so that's a no-go. Then the lizard comes along to play, and Spider-Man, with his 6 arms, just kicks his ass. Instead of the old 1-2, here's the new 1 through 6, Spider-Man says, before handling the situation very quickly. And then throughout the pages, he just takes out everybody. I mean, the Beast gets handled by his 6 hands, and then he sneaks past Cyclops, he evades Iceman and Angel, and finally he talks to Professor X about his new problem, and we get this panel, which is glorious. We have Peter yelling about how he's a cripple. Yeah, okay, a cripple with superpowers and 4 extra superpowered arms. Okay, Pete, relax. Number 5, Spider-Punk. This one is actually one of my favorite costumes to throw on when I web up bad guys in the Spider-Man PS4 game. I dig the mohawk a lot, it's pretty badass. So we got Hobart Brown. He made his first debut in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue 10. So in the Spider-Verse storyline, President Norman Osborn, you heard me, he dumped some toxic waste that ended up turning this homeless teenager into a rock star superhero. So he ended up killing Osborn by bashing him to death with a guitar. And that was enough to get him on the radar of Superior Spider-Man, of course, when he was then asked to join the army of Spider-Man. I guarantee you somebody in the crowd watched him beat Norman and was like, oh, hope he plays Time of Your Life next. Love that song. Number 4, Spider Assassin. Introduced also in a What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine in 2008, Spider-Man is a serious dude in this world. So this version of Spidey becomes an assassin that works alongside Wolverine, which sounds like a pretty cool gig. However, he eventually becomes kind of jaded, with no problem when it comes time to killing bad guys and just doing whatever it takes to get the job done. This Spider-Man has beaten the Black Widow with ease. He's reckless. He's a little rough around the edges with his powers as well. A little less fun to see in action in a way. Like this version of Pete doesn't even make quips or crack jokes like the other Spider-Man we know and love. No, this version just means business. I mean, he literally has a gun like in his web shooters, which he enjoys using after he tries the webs out. Number 3, Spider-Side. Making his debut in the New Warriors issue 61, he was created by Miles Warren, better known as the Jackal, during everybody's favorite Clone Saga. This guy wasn't around for too long, but he's pretty memorable, okay? So he too can stretch his limbs out and he can even turn into liquid, okay? He's wild. So he came out of one of Jackal's pods and then thought he was the real deal, although he was just engineered to kill the real Peter, the real Ben, the real Kane, and the real Mary Jane. So he turned into a monster. That was his thing. So Spider-Side and the Jackal killed like 2,600 people in Springville, Pennsylvania by releasing an airborne version of the carrion virus. So he has these extra abilities as well that make him stand out. Like his molecular structure, he can control. He can shapeshift and control the density of his body tissue, so it's going to be a lot to keep him down. He can turn into liquid and then transform his fists into objects to fight with. He can turn into liquid. Like that Cards Against Humanity card that says chainsaws for hands. He would read that and be like, Number 2, Mayday Parker. One of my favorite what if stories, okay? Here we go. So we have Peter Parker, this time from the MC2 universe. So after enduring a battle with the Green Goblin, Peter ends up losing his left leg. And this is the end of Spider-Man as we know it. It's super depressing, he has to walk around with a cane, but at the start of this issue, he reflects on how much he loves his newborn daughter, May, saying he wanted to spend every waking moment with her and MJ. But of course, being Spider-Man, he had other stuff to do. He had other responsibilities. He has quite a bit to deal with. Now, having one leg is the only thing that he's got to deal with, or rather May Parker has to deal with. Because now we get to see May Parker grow up and put on the suit herself and take over the job, and it's great. She is a total badass. It's stated that she's not as strong as her father, like physically when it comes to strength, but what makes her a driving force is her advanced spider sense. So her father would get a feeling that a particular spot was dangerous to him, whereas May's spider sense could pinpoint the exact direction the danger's coming from, and then she could recognize the danger too. Like if it's the same person shooting at her, she'll know, even without seeing them in the first place. She can recognize the danger. That's crazy. She's the coolest. And number 1, Cosmic Spider-Man. Making its first debut in the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue 9, Cosmic Spider-Man is exactly what you would imagine. It's Peter Parker from Earth 13 after he's retained the powers of the Enigma Force. He's one of the most powerful beings in the universe at this point. And he died at the hands of Solus in issue 11, when the Inheritors attacked Earth 13 and Peter confronted him. He was the powerful cosmic god version of Peter, which is what the Inheritors munched on, so he drained the Force from Peter. That's how he died. So yeah, his time was short and sweet, but when you have extra abilities on top of your Spider-Man abilities like flight, matter manipulation, energy blast. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mojo. I'll start this list off with a rather fun one. Not that any villain isn't fun, but when Mojo's involved, it always gets a little too weird in some way. He made his first debut in Longshot issue 3. Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. So we're all actors. I'm in your screen right now. I'm actually part of Mojo's universe. I'm not even real. And his power increases the more viewers that he gets for this interdimensional TV show. So if you subscribe and like this video, maybe I'll get more powerful too, who knows? He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings. They're from a planet called Mojo World, of course, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So it's all about him, we get it. He messes with the Avengers in a pretty dramatic way as well, especially in Avengers Annual 1. The Avengers of the Supernatural. Wow, there is a title right there. So in this issue, Mojo abducted the Avengers and created another supernatural version of the team. And if that wasn't weird enough, he made them participate in this reality show called Martian Transylvania Superhero Mutant Monster Hunter High School, which is just a mouthful. Basically, the mutants of the Unity Division were goths, the others were football players and cheerleaders, and the Avengers of the Supernatural were nerds. So he likes to play it weird. And before we continue on with this list of Avengers villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us more power by giving us a like down there, and if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well click that, and then you can see all our videos pop up. We do all the work for you. We'll just show up in your phone. Number 9, the Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the canisters broke open, covering him in gamma radiation. God, everybody is so clumsy in comics all the time. Just so many spills. So of course, after the spill, Stearns survived just like Banner did after his gamma accident, but the only difference was it affected him in a much different way. See, he didn't get angrier, he got smarter and smarter, because now his brain could absorb so much more and more information. It actually got to a point where his physical body started to mutate. So now he has this giant green brain head. His head just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It looks like a gushy balloon, just about to pop any second. Of course he's a villain. Look at his head. I mean, no offense, but come on, I'd be upset too. That's all I'm saying. I'd be pretty upset. He started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind, and he clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding once. He's kind of a jerk. But he's gone after the Avengers as well. When the Red Hulk gave Stearns red gamma treatment to enhance him even more, becoming the Red Leader, he became a member of the Thunderbolts. Number 8, the Mandarin. Ah yes, the first time Marvel told us that the popular enhanced individual was actually an actor all along. The Mandarin. He was in Iron Man 3, kind of. I mean, I'm including him on this list because that version wasn't even close to what he's really like. He made his first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 50. While exploring the inside of a cave in the Valley of the Spirits, he found an alien ship and a passenger still in there as well, named Axon Carr. But while he was there, he also saw 10 rings, these powerful rings, each representing a new power. So he took them, because he's a villain. Then after finishing off the alien pilot, he began to study these rings and he began mastering them as well. So if he wears them all at once, his mind will be reached by the spirits trapped within the rings. Yeah, he's a pretty sick villain. And then in Iron Man 3, his name's Trevor and he just like crushes beer. Number 7, Grim Reaper. This next one we thought we were gonna see in WandaVision, but we thought wrong. We thought maybe if it wasn't Mephisto, it's probably Grim Reaper, but we were wrong on both. The Grim Reaper did not show up, but his silhouette did for a hot second, maybe. Eric Williams made his debut back in Avengers issue 52. He's the brother of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. He was considered a black sheep of the family, and when he was younger, he accidentally burnt down his house after, you guessed it, being clumsy with chemicals. The usual. So his brother felt responsible for not stopping him or being there for him when watching him. So after that, he began to watch him closely, a little bit too close, because Eric then became rebellious because of the supervision, and then soon he ended up with the Magia in Las Vegas while his brother stayed and took over the family business. So with the business failing, no thanks to Stark being the top dog in innovation, he turns to his brother for some mob help to get things going again. So Simon embezzled money with Eric, but Simon got caught and thrown into the slammer. Went thrown right to jail. So Baron Zemo approached him, asked for help to take out the Avengers, and revenge on Stark was included, so he was like, sure, this sounds like a pretty sweet gig. So then he got turned into Wonder Man, but he ended up saving the Avengers from Zemo's trap. He turned, he went good guy. But his brother, Eric, he heard of Simon's untimely departure, so he got angry and felt tremendous guilt after this. So he contacted the Tinkerer, who gave him a scythe. Then he took on the name of Grim Reaper, and voila, we now have a pretty badass villain. Number 6, Enchantress, aka Amora. She made her first debut in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and she has a love-hate relationship with Thor. And I'm not gonna lie, she's got a pretty sweet gig. She's got multiple mansions throughout the 9 realms, and she can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even if she gets stood up on prom, she's gonna cry a few diamonds, and then she has more bling for the next date. So it's a win-win. She's really good at seducing people as well, like Scourge, for example. She would seduce him into helping her with her evil plans. But Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just play hard to get, and she would mess with his mind and his heart. Now in the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster, but when she tried to attack Jane, of course, her love Thor intervened, and that's when she was banished to Earth by Odin. And then her next logical step as a villain is to join the Masters of Evil and get in line for taking down Thor or any of his annoying super teammates. Her tool is seduction, just one kiss, and that's all it takes to make you fall under her control. She doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because she doesn't really need it. She just gets other dudes to fight her battles for her. What a boss.
In a 10 Werewolf by Night. The first time we've seen Moon Knight in the comics actually wasn't in his own series, but rather Werewolf by Night number 32. He faced off against Jack Russoff, aka Werewolf by Night, making Russoff his enemy. However, technically, Moon Knight was the villain in this scenario, hence its placement at number 10. Jacob Russoff is a werewolf, but unlike his dad, also a werewolf, Jack could control when and where he would transform, not just under a full moon. He had much more control over his abilities in werewolf form as well, except for when there was a full moon, because that's when Jack would be at his strongest, but also completely out of control, which is a concept that sounds a lot like a D&D character. His superpowers include werewolf physiology, along with superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, stamina, a healing factor, and of course a hairy body packed with a nasty set of teeth and killer claws, something the ladies love. In at 9, Morpheus. Morpheus first appeared in Moon Knight number 12 back in the early 80s, and he's one of the rare horrifying characters that people actually feel sympathy for. Despite his vampiric appearance, he should not be mistaken for Morbius. This is a different person. The character who's getting the standalone movie, no one knows what universe it's in. Yeah, Morbius is indeed a pseudo-vampire, while Morpheus is something else entirely. His real name is Robert Markham, and he got sick from an old virus that caused segments of his DNA to be inhibited by the virus. He sought medical attention and Dr. Peter Alron gave him an untested drug to help him, but it all backfired, causing Markham to change dramatically appearance-wise while also taking away Markham's need for sleep and giving him unfathomable psionic powers. However, the lack of sleep rendered him crazy, after which he had taken the alias Morpheus after the Olympian god of dreams. With his newfound powers, Morpheus sought revenge upon Alron, only to encounter Moon Knight in the process. And it ate Count Nefaria. While Count Nefaria wasn't purely evil at first, his desire for more wealth and power is ultimately his downfall, and he's very nefarious. He has been around for years and years, fighting almost every single Avenger he can think of. He also encountered Moon Knight after Mark Spector moved to LA and joined the West Coast Avengers, primarily becoming his villain. Count Nefaria is immortal and has an unfathomably strong healing factor, because, you know, he's immortal. He received energy projection from the living Lazar, strength from Power Man, and speed from Whirlwind, all amplified 100 times. He can lift well over 100 tons, fly over 5,000 miles per hour, teleport, leech another person's energy, and so much more. However, it's likely that if you are a fan of Moon Knight, you knew about this guy, so he's not very high on the list. But honestly, not having known much about Moon Knight before this list, aside from he looks freaking awesome, all these villains are pretty new to me, so it's pretty cool getting to see all the characters that this guy has faced, and hopefully you at least hear about a few that you didn't know about. But no complaining if you're a Moon Knight superfan, okay? That's not allowed. That's cheating. And it's 7, Dead Zone. There are a few characters more 90s than Dead Zone, but he has his appeal. Dead Zone sort of emulates the classic Iron Man villain Whiplash with his electrical whips, but he's less a mercenary than just an ideological warrior. He seeks to punish sinners by lashing them to death, that has him run afoul with Moon Knight. Dead Zone first appeared in Moon Knight's solo title and is pretty evenly matched for the character. When Moon Knight tried to take him down with his adamantium, Dead Zone catches it and then turns it around on him. There is very little on the wiki about him, and honestly I don't know what else I could say about him, but he's trying to do what Moon Knight does, but going about it in an absolutely abysmal way. Like, come on bro, really? Whips? Like, I get that they're OP in like the Spider-Man PS4 game, but seem seriously underpowered in real life or in comic books, unless they need them for plot or you're into that kind of thing. And at 6, Black Spectre. Carson Knowles was a veteran who returned home without applause. His job had been passed on and his wife left him with their son. He barely got by as a delivery man and found out his son was killed by phone. After his car was stripped for parts and a mugger accosted him, Knowles snapped and beat the man nearly to death. Seeking to destroy the city that treated him so badly, Carson Knowles ran as a dark horse candidate for mayor on his father's name and political connections. He also created a second identity as Black Spectre, beating and blackmailing the local precinct boss to support Knowles, and then in a fight with Moon Knight his mask slipped, but Moon Knight was unable to convince anyone that the mayoral candidate Knowles and Black Spectre were the same person. Eventually though, Moon Knight defeated Black Spectre in public and his assistant Marlene Arlone uncovered Knowles' corrupt plans for the city and his political office, so at least he lost.
Number 10, Explorer. Explorer is one of the elders of the universe, some of the oldest living beings and entities to have ever existed. Among them are some names that you may recognize, although you may have not known them to be elders of the universe, such as the Collector and Grandmaster. Explorer is believed to be one of the oldest beings belonging to the elders, and considers the other members of the team to be like his siblings. He is probably one of the most lesser known of the elders of the universe despite his immortality, and also one of the most mysterious. If he has a power set, we don't really know what it is, but like the other elders, as time goes on, the longer you survive, it seems the more powerful you become, whether or not you have superpowers. Wisdom and time strengthen you. Explorer has only appeared in a few issues of the comics, which is why he's likely so often forgotten in comparison to other members of the Elders of the Universe. Number 9, Origin. Origin is a super cool idea for a character. I love how many cool abstract entities we have like this in the Marvel Universe and the multiverse. Origin represents all the origins we have within the Marvel Universe of 616, seen as a being therefore of fate. Origin is believed to have been the one responsible for summoning the forces and events needed to come together in order to have granted and ordained mutants abilities from the moment of their conception and growth in the womb, created groups like Fantastic Fantastic Four and brought Thor and the Asgardians to Earth. Basically, if something in 616 has an origin probably played a role in that. They are constantly in battle with an entity known as the Unbeing, who has sought to undo what they have brought to pass. Origin first appeared in Quasar in issue number 18. What a neat and, of course, powerful concept. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about some of the lesser known cosmic entities and gods of the Marvel Universe, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Black Winter. Black Winter is an entity that feels weird to me to have so low on this list, but at the same time, despite being a multiversal god-like cosmic being, they did recently get their metaphorical butt whooped by Thor in the comics. However, that's likely not the end of this cosmic entity, despite them appearing to have died there. There was a lot of foreshadowing that they brought with them when they appeared in the first story arc of Donny Cates' current 2020 Thor series. The Black Winter was formerly known as the Creeping Plague in the comics when they first appeared, but over many years revealed themselves more fully in the comics, being known by the name of Black Winter, as they generate a dark eldritch snowfall which can destroy anything that its flakes come into contact with. Pretty fitting name, I think. Pretty powerful entity. But still, no match for power cosmic amped up Thor, who drained Galactus of all his power, seemingly killing him in order to destroy this threat. Yeah, Thor OP. If Thor was someone that we didn't know about, he would be a great person for this list. But as I said, we all know Thor, right? Who doesn't know Thor? If you don't know Thor, I don't know, you don't know Marvel at this point. That's something you gotta know. Number 7. Witchcraft. Witchcraft is the goddess of witchcraft. As far as I know, she's only ever really appeared in the Scarlet Witch series, showing up there once. The goddess of witchcraft is, as she sounds she would be, the goddess of all magic and pretty much all magic users. Scarlet Witch sensed that something was wrong with magic and the goddess, and realized that witchcraft was basically being targeted by another abstract entity and god, Chaos. Chaos sought to destroy witchcraft and pretty much succeeded in the end, but Wanda's mother, Natalia Maximoff, also a powerful witch, sacrificed her own soul to bring back the goddess of witchcraft and to resurrect the powerful witch and Wanda's mentor, Agatha Harkness. Witchcraft is so cool, both the goddess and just like the whole world of it within Marvel. Such a cool idea. I need to go read more Scarlet Witch now. Excuse me. Number 6. Chthon. Chthon is the god of chaos, known for their attachment to the Scarlet Witch, aka Avenger Wanda Maximoff. Her powers of chaos have been tied to this god in the past, and at times, because of their ties, Chthon has even tried to break through into the earthly plane through her by attempting to possess her. Well, succeeding in possessing her and then basically having to be like defeated is more what happened. Chthon actually belongs to a group of earthen gods known as the Elder Gods. Why does that sound so spookily familiar? The Elder Gods? Chthon is actually believed to be the most powerful of all the Elder Gods actually. He has connections to dark magic and chaos magic and is not just a powerful god, but also an immensely powerful mystical force besides. Basically, just bad news. If Chthon shows up to the party, get out of there, it's gonna be chaos all over the place. Number 10. Hepzibah. Despite not being a mutant, Hepzibah became a member of the mainly mutant team of the X-Men after leaving the Starjammers. Initially she was Corsair's lover, but after being forced to part ways with the Starjammers, she would end up on Earth and join the X-Men team. Hepzibah's abilities come from her own skill set and from her alien physiology. Hepzibah is a Mephistoid, the member of an anthropomorphic skunk-like alien race. After the loss of Corsair, Hepzibah would end up becoming closer to fellow X-Men member Warpath, and would even become his lover as well in the comics. It's fine, Corsair was dead at the time. While Hepzibah was a member of the X-Men and even was recruited for a time to be on X-Force, she eventually would return to the Starjammers once her lover, Corsair, also Cyclops, Havoc's and Vulcan's father, had returned from the dead. Number 9. Egg. While Fabio Medina might be more easily recognized now that he is part of the all-important mutant team known as the Five, responsible for resurrecting fallen mutants, when he was known by his former codename of Goldballs, he would have been much less recognizable. Also, if you haven't been reading the comics for a while, you might not know that he's important now. That sounds so mean. He was important before, but he's really important now, you know what I mean? Fabio's power allows him to produce and shoot, well, gold balls from his body, each one firing off with a poink sound. However, since his time as gold balls, it was more recently revealed during the Dawn of X that the balls he was producing were in actuality unfertile eggs. With this revelation, he took up the name Egg and became part of the 5 most important mutants on the island nation of Krakoa. As with this newly understood power, he could create eggs which could then be made fertile and used to regrow and resurrect fallen mutants. So if you haven't heard of Egg or Gold Balls, he's a member you'll likely be more interested in knowing now. And before we move on to our next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love mutants as much as I love mutants, and I love them a lot, be sure you show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Beak. Beak's mutation ended up being slightly more unfortunate in comparison to some of the other more well-known core members of the X-Men team. Beak is Barnal Bohusk, and his mutant powers are simply that he looks and shares similar attributes to a bird. His bones are hollow and light, meant to lend well to flying, and he has feathers which should also allow him or help him to fly, and yet he's not really a good flyer, which is kind of sad. In fact, initially Beak couldn't really fly at all when he first appeared. Now he can, but he still has to work really hard to do so, and even then he can really only fly for short distances. Other than that, Beak simply can see better than most at long range and is armed with talons and a beak, which he can obviously use to fight. But for the most part, Beak simply looks like a bird, and as such is usually more on the sidelines than in the middle of the action. He did for a while have a suit, however, that enhanced his abilities and also granted him additional strength and powers, more useful for physical fighting. Number 7. Morph. Because there are multiple morphs out there, not everyone is as familiar with Benjamin Deeds as the morph who appeared in the animated X-Men series from the 90s. This version of Morph, however, is a lot less cocky in comparison to that animated series version. Benjamin Deeds is a mutant who, like the animated version, can transform into anyone else. However, his powers are a little more unique than most shapeshifters. The more time he spends with someone, the more his appearance will grow to mimic theirs, not really becoming an exact duplicate of them, but more becoming his own version of that person, which also affects how that person sees him. Using his powers also makes the person he resembles both more eager to like and to trust Morph. And actually, initially I believe Morph didn't even like that codename. They were like, you should be Morph, and he was like, meh, nah. Number 6. Thunderbird. While we haven't seen Neil Shara in a while, he was listed as a member of the X-Men in the Ten of Swords handbook, and while it's since been revealed that the X-Men were originally made defunct after Krakoa came to be during Dawn of X, they saw their return during the denouement of the Ten of Swords event in their own series, X-Men, which had been going on since Dawn of X in the comics, comically, despite the team no longer being technically recognized by the Quiet Council. So it's really weird. It's like we had an X-Men series, but like no one acknowledged that the X-Men team existed. Anyways, they're back now, sort of. Thunderbird could also appear again at some point as part of X Corporation, as Neil has also been a part of that team in the past. While he's not the most recognizable mutant to use the codename Thunderbird, Neil is still one of those mutants. His abilities allow him to convert ambient heat into solar plasma, turning his entire body into this type of plasma, which gives him a variety of abilities and powers, including emitting focused plasma beams and flight. Number 10. Binary. Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel ended up in a fight with Rogue that left her zapped of her powers and her memories. During the tussle, Carol was thrown from the Golden Gate Bridge, but fortunately Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, showed up to save the day. Unfortunately, when Carol came to, it was apparent that her memories had been wiped. Spider-Woman reached out to the X-Men for help, and for a time, Carol Danvers became part of that team. Professor X was able to help restore Carol's memories, but her emotional attachments to those memories would remain lost. It was during her time adventuring with the X-Men that she would become binary after a space adventure with the team saw her cross paths with the Brood, who exposed her to an evolutionary ray that tapped into her latent potential. True story. Number 9. Longshot. Longshot is a paradoxal hero. He ended up joining the X-Men after being sent to Earth by Mojo so that he would forget all that had passed before that, like the part where he almost defeated Mojo. Without his memories, Longshot showed up in the X-Men's danger room and would end up befriending them and serving as an ally and a teammate. He is the father of Shatterstar, who he had with X-Men member Dazzler, but was also made from Shatterstar's DNA, creating a paradox and a strange time loop when it comes to his origins and his creation. Longshot got his name during his time on Earth, which was given to him because of his fighting style. Longshot always taking the long shot, the less likely, more desperate path of success in fights. Longshot, however, can do this as while not a mutant but being engineered from the DNA of one, he possesses probability altering powers which grant him a bit of luck. He also has enhanced speed, strength, agility, and endurance, which he often uses to fight with using throwing knives. Longshot is also known for his super handsome powers that cause many people he meets to instantly fall for him. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love X-Men truly as much as I love X-Men, then be sure to show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at the channel, so thank you if you already did that. Number 8. Surge. Surge grew up homeless on the streets of New York after running away from her home when her powers first manifested. Far away apparently, as she was born initially in Tokyo, and her parents still live there. Her powers cause her to absorb electricity from all nearby sources at all times, without the ability to stop, even zapping electricity out of the air. She can then discharge this energy through blasts or by using it to give herself bursts of super speed. Noriko Ashida's powers are hard for her to control and are considered volatile, which is why Beast created gauntlets for her that helped her to control them when she was later welcomed into the Xavier Institute, after initially being turned away. Number 7. Danger. Who could forget one of the most important members of the X-Men? The Danger Room. The Danger Room was a room used to help train the various members of the X-Men team, but was later revealed to be mutated technology which had evolved to become a sentient AI. So yeah, an AI mutant. Danger revealed their intelligence to Xavier when, after an upgrade and relocation facilitated by Mutant Forge, they asked, "Where am I?" Charles chose to ignore this and hide the room's sentience from the X-Men so that he could continue to use it to train his team. Pretty selfish, Professor. Danger is extremely powerful, and parallels between her and Ultron are often drawn on in the comics when it comes to all the destruction that she could be capable of. She possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability, as well as enhanced reflexes and agility. She can command and control other technology and use her own mass to recreate other materials and/or rooms. She can also create other technology and even technological bodies if she happens to have mechanical devices, scrap, or equipment to work with. Number 6. Caliban. Caliban is believed to have gotten his name from that of the character from William Shakespeare's Tempest, often referred to as having a monstrous appearance. Poor Caliban, and also poor Caliban. Caliban is one of the members of the Morlocks, but he would later on join the X-Force and even go on to team up with the X-Men later on, despite him and the Morlocks being their frequent enemies in the past. Caliban's mutant powers increase the reaction of his fight or flight response, allowing him to manifest super strength as well as a sort of absorption and then later emission of fear. Basically, if you're feeling afraid in the moment, he can kind of like take that in and then put it back at you, or if he's feeling afraid. It's pretty useful. You're gonna be afraid, you know what I mean? These powers only appear when in this mode, however, when Caliban experiences that increase in adrenaline. He is also able to sense the presence of mutants within a nearby radius, and that's a mutant power that he has even when he's not in that fight or flight mode. Number 10. Candy Southern. While Candy wasn't necessarily a member, she did help the X-Men and made her first appearance in X-Men issue 31 in the 60s. She was a longtime friend of Angel's and would later end up dating Warren. She also would team up with the X-Men to help find Warren when he went missing after learning of the fellow mutant team's existence, and Warren Worthington III's role as Hero Angel on the team. Candy would later break up with Warren and was killed by X-Factor enemy and former friend Cameron Hodge. Candace Southern wasn't a mutant and didn't have any powers, but she was skilled in business. I personally would love to see her somehow be resurrected and return to the comics in the new X-Corp series, working alongside the mutants as a human ally in business. That could be pretty cool. Number 9. Brew! Brew is one of my favorite of the more obscure X-Men members. He is a mutant of the Brood alien race. Brood are basically terrifying, violent, and love hurting others. Bru, however, is very different from the rest of his race, being a mutant. His mutant power is actually compassion or empathy. Unlike the rest of his species, he doesn't enjoy hurting others and, in fact, is more inclined to try and help others instead. Aww. Basically, he's a big brood sweetheart. Recently in the comics, Bru accidentally became the new brood king after consuming the king egg, and just in time too, as the mutant nation was in the midst of being overrun with invading brood at the time. Consuming the king egg allowed Bru to tap into and basically control the hive mind, becoming the leader of his species. And if you missed out on that whole fun adventure, you can check it out in the newest X-Men series. That's where that all went down, and it was pretty exciting to read. Bru initially appeared in the 2004 Astonishing X-Men series in issue 40, and would later team up with and be taken in by the X-Men, joining the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. He'd also get to have like a really fun day with Tony Stark, which is another fun Bru adventure. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, which is a lot, be sure to show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. And why not hit that subscribe as well while you're down there. Number 8. Vulcan. Vulcan is the retcon youngest brother of Alex and Scott Summers, aka Havoc and Cyclops. He was introduced during X-Men Deadly Genesis and was revealed to be one of the mutants who was part of Charles Xavier's original and formerly unknown rescue mission to save his team from Krakoa. Vulcan was the name he'd chosen for himself, though his name was originally Gabriel Summers. When Catherine Summers was kidnapped, she was pregnant with Gabriel, but he was taken from her womb and put in an incubation accelerator. Once fully grown, he was intended to be used as the Shi'ar Emperor's servant, but he escaped and was found and recruited by Moira McTaggart to join the X-Men. Vulcan's powers are similar to both his brothers and involve energy manipulation. He is considered an Omega level mutant and is capable of absorbing energy and dispelling it in the form of blasts. He can also use the energy to heal, fly, create constructs, manipulate objects, and as a form of sustenance. Number 7. Mimic. Mimic is a mutant, but one who gained his abilities after knocking over a beaker accidentally in his father's lab, which caused a chemical reaction that created a strange red gas which he then inhaled. His powers allow him to mimic the abilities and skills of other beings within a certain distance of him. Increased exposure to others' abilities seems to also grant him more permanent adaptations of those powers. It wasn't until more recently that it was actually confirmed that Mimic was in fact a mutant during House of X, as suspected since the 90s. Instead, we were led to believe initially that he was a human whose DNA was genetically altered. While not often appearing in the comics, Mimic, aka Calvin Rankin, is a character who has been around since the 60s, if you can believe it, and first appeared in X-Men issue 19, where fans were introduced to him and the question was posed of whether or not Mimic was a mutant or something far worse. Turns out he was a mutant. Mimic is a longtime villain of the X-Men who did for a time play the role of hero and has served on both the heroic X-Men team as well as Norman Osborn's dark X-Men team during the events of Dark Reign. But anyways, I feel like Norman Osborn's team should count, so if we do a part 5, expect me to get into some of that. Number 6. Warbird. Warbird is a pretty unique character, having been born as a member of the Shi'ar Empire, but not knowing her parents. Her mother was an alien who was taken captive and who was killed by giving birth to Avidara, who would grow up to be Warbird. Her mother's reproductive organs basically were not compatible with the Shi'ar, and so she did not survive the pregnancy. Avidara would grow up to become a Shi'ar warrior and join the prestigious Warbirds, whose job it was to guard the royal family. Warbird is not a mutant, but would work alongside the X-Men team and cross paths with them while being tasked with guarding over Kid Gladiator. She first appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men in issue number 1. Number 10. Skin. I love me some Gen X mutants, which is why you know I need to talk about Skin on this list. Skin is a mutant whose mutation is basically just a bunch of extra skin. In the comics, it actually took a while for Angelo to be able to embrace his abilities, as he basically resented his powers and being a mutant. However, as time went on, he came to accept them and even became quite good at utilizing his extra skin and using it as a cool power. He could even use it to change the appearance of his shape and face, becoming somewhat of a shapeshifter. While Angelo Espinosa can stretch his skin, it should be noted that his skeleton does not change, making his power kind of a weird weird and unique one. Skin is also known for having literally thick skin that is more durable than most, as well as more elastic. Number 9. Husk. Paige Guthrie might not be one of the main heroes that you think of when you think X-Men, but for a time she was actually a close-knit part of that team, and even had a controversial romantic relationship with fellow X-Men member Angel, who, even though we don't talk about him as much, is one of the original members, so yeah. I even thought of like putting him on this list just because we never talk about him, but I was like, wow, that would be mad disrespect to Angel, so I couldn't do it. I can't lie, I'm actually really excited for the X-Corp series just because I am ready for Angel's return to the spotlight. Paige's powers are fairly unique in that she can shed her skin to reveal a new layer of skin made out of a different material beneath it. This new outer layer of skin can be made of anything that she wants it to be, such as wood, rubber, or even diamonds. Diamond skin is so cool. Just taking a page of Emma Frost's book there. Love it. Number 8. Hellion. So yeah, the early 2000s saw us go through a mutant boom. A boom that likely led to the events of House of M, which was probably used from a practical standpoint to kind of remove a good number of mutants because it was just getting, well, it was getting so out of hand with keeping track of all of these different mutants. We had so many. Too many maybe. Just kidding, you can never have too many mutants. Hellion was a part of this boom, and he took inspiration for his codename from his mentor Emma Frost's fallen group of mutants, the Hellions. Julian Keller is likely a mutant associated with the X-Men that we don't talk about as often because, well, he's kind of a jerk, and he's not as much of a lovable jerk as someone like Sunspot, so yeah. Julian possesses a unique version of telekinesis in that his powers are far more advanced and allow him to take control on a seemingly molecular level of different objects. They also come with a super cool color as well. Everything he does is like green with his powers. Unfortunately, when emotions get in the way of these powers, this level of telekinesis results in him sometimes combusting objects by accident or simply in anger. Hellion has made a return in Krakoa and has appeared in a few comics, but hasn't become a main member of any of the prominent teams featured there just yet. I personally think it'd be cool to see Hellion on the Hellions, but I don't know if he's like messed up enough to be on the Hellions. Number 7. Mercury. Mercury is another mutant to come from the bunch that Hellion was a part of. Julian was actually her first friend that she made when she arrived at the Xavier Institute. Mercury's, or Cecily Kincaid's, parents had sent their daughter there after her powers first manifested, ashamed that she was a mutant. Eventually they would actually end up disowning her after they themselves were pulled into a mutant conflict. Mercury's powers allow her to turn her skin into liquid metal, which she can then control, reform, and use to shapeshift with. This form is of course made up of non-toxic mercury, which is where she gets her codename from. Mercury was also one of the few mutants to keep her powers following the events of M-Day. In fact, I have quite a few of those on my list. Not all of them, but a few of them. Number 6. Darwin. Darwin has some of the coolest abilities, and yet he isn't often easily recognized as being one of the main members of the X-Men, even though he's been a part of the team for quite some time in the comics. For a long time he was actually stuck bonded to Vulcan, as he was part of one of the first teams of X-Men Xavier and Moira ever had. I don't know if we called that team the X-Men, but they're basically like another squad of X-Men in my mind, so. He was part of the first team sent in to rescue the X-Men from Krakoa, though we wouldn't find out about that team in terms of comic book history till many years after the events of the X-Men's printed fight against the mutant Living Island. Darwin's powers allow him to evolve as needed to ensure his survival. This basically makes him almost immortal, as he can evolve to resolve almost any life-threatening situation. Recently, in the current X-Men run in issue number 5, this is why Darwin was chosen to be one of the team members to be sent into the vault after Serafina, as it wasn't known how long the team sent in would be locked within that place where time moves more quickly in comparison to Earth. I feel like they also just came out recently, but I haven't read that issue yet, so no spoilers.
Kicking off the list, number 10, Zombie She-Hulk. First appearing in Marvel Zombies Dead Days, issue number 1 back in 2007, the story takes place on Earth 2149 after a zombie plague, which you may have guessed by now just based off the name. Now this comic is super dark and gory. The zombie runs give us a fun variation of the Avengers, especially Jen Walters. See, when Jen first arrived at the Avengers mansion after the Avengers Assemble call, she was shocked to find that Earth's mightiest heroes have become Earth's munchiest heroes, no thanks to a plague. Now it wasn't long at all before Jen herself was zombified zombified, and then she got this fantastic appetite. Yeah, she took a bite or 6 out of Franklin Richards and his sister Valeria. So you can imagine the look on the Fantastic Four's face when they returned. They weren't too jazzed, especially Sue Storm. And before we go on with this list of incredible Hulks, guys, if you want to go ahead and Hulk smash that like button, that would be great. It really goes a long way for our channel here. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 9, Venom Hulk. Okay, this next one isn't around too long in the comics, but maybe that's a good thing. Venom Hulk is terrifying, and it all goes down in the 1989 What If series, issue 4. It shows us what exactly would happen if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man. It's a pretty scary alternative to if the Fantastic Four hadn't been able to separate Peter and the suit originally. Now it gets ugly pretty quickly, and the other Avengers are called upon to try and stop Peter from causing irreversible damage. Doctor Strange hurls spells at him for hours, and it's still no use. Now it's no surprise that when the Hulk comes in to start smashing, the symbiote sees his power and it wants that power. It's like, well, this guy's pretty jacked. And then when it comes into contact with the Hulk, this behemoth is born. So finally Thor comes around to hopefully try and end this disaster of a situation, but he's greeted by a creature containing the powers of both Spider-Man and the Hulk. Good game, guys. Number 8, Captain Universe Hulk. This one is short and sweet. Captain Universe isn't a person, per se, despite how the name sounds. It's the uni-power, which is an aspect of the Enigma Force. It's a manifestation of the universe itself, it's sentient, and it's on the hunt for whoever is in ultimate danger. It bonds with them. And after we just heard with Venom Hulk, it's safe to say that we're in for another bonding treat of some sort. The Unipower has bonded with Daredevil, X-23, and when Banner accidentally steps on a bear trap in Captain Universe in the Hulk issue 1, he bonds with the Unipower in order to survive the cold and dangerous landscapes. Imagine just stepping on a bear trap and then all of a sudden it's like, I'm the Unipower, you need me, trust me. You're like, oh, this day sucks. Number 7, Lizard Hulk. Lizard Hulk is so much fun. Okay, let's talk about it. He comes from Earth 19919. His name is Robert Banner, and he of course has a similar origin that we're most familiar with when it comes to the Hulk. Only he was infected by the spider virus in Spider Island issue 1, released back in 2015. So now he's the Hulk, but he's got extra arms, and that means he's even more powerful. How wonderful! The Spider Queen is standing tall over Manhattan, with the residents of New York City turning into spiders. So for our heroes, it's probably best if they switch to a different animal's DNA, to avoid the whole mind control Spider Queen situation. So Captain America gets a hairy upgrade, and then the Hulk gets paired with some lizard DNA, resulting in a weird but exciting showdown. It's like Godzilla meets Ganon meets Bruce Banner. It's just a hot mess. Number 6, Nerd Hulk, aka Robert Banner. He made his first appearance in the Ultimates with Avengers issue 3. Nerd Hulk sounds like a version of the Hulk that we saw from Endgame, but there's more to it. See, this Hulk is actually referred to as Vampire King, which sounds interesting, but I'll get to that in a second. So he was a clone originally created by Stark's older brother, Gregory Stark. Now the clone has all the smarts and it has the Hulk's strength, but it lacked the anger, which Captain America wasn't really a fan of. See, Cap was also able to take him down easily, so it's clear you need to have anger in order to be the Hulk completely. So when Nerd Hulk is set to take on Red Skull, he's actually able to crush the Cosmic Cube. Only this was an illusion and the Red Skull was able to blast Nerd Hulk away. So now we need an upgrade. We need to change something up. We can't have the Hulk just getting blasted away every time there's a mission. We needed some anger in there so our clone Robert can pull his weight, literally. So he wasn't active for a while after this point. He was even denied when he asked to rejoin the team after they took on Ghost Rider. Poor Robert. So he traveled to New York City where there just happened to be a vampire outbreak. So now he's Team Edward, vampire and all. He's working for the vamp leader referred to as Anthony. So Banner ended up disagreeing with his leadership and took him out of the picture, and he actually took his spot. So now, Nerd Vampire Hulk was the new leader of the vampires, which is pretty sweet. Something we're probably not gonna get on screen, but it's nice to imagine. Number 5, Kang. This guy we can actually look forward to knowing more about soon, as he's confirmed for the next Ant-Man sequel with actor Jonathan Majors set to play him. But just who is Kang the Conqueror? Why is this a big deal for the Avengers? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on beings from any of those timelines. He's super smart and of course travels with armies, with each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry, story, so the fights aren't exactly easy by any means. The time travel stuff also doesn't come without consequence either. See, as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, and with the cosmic multiversal route that Marvel's going with now in the MCU, and especially with Loki's show, we could probably look forward to some more mind-bending battles. Number 4, Taskmaster. Taskmaster made his first comic book debut in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. Although he is one guy, he has this ability where he can copy your every move. So he can replicate your physical skills. He has photographic reflexes, so he can watch Black Widow take down an evil henchman, and bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows how to do the same type of combat as well. He's actually the villain of the Black Widow movie, but that has yet to come out due to COVID delays, so the general public doesn't really know how cool this guy is yet. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains and agents, one of those agents being US agent John Walker, who is currently turning heads for all the wrong reasons in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who taught Walker how to throw Cap's shield so well. In Avengers issue 196, he was able to capture Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, and Ant-Man, and then when the rest of the team showed up, he took them on as well, only being defeated because he could not predict the movements of the robot Jocasta. Otherwise, it's a tough battle, this one for sure. Number 3, Mephisto. While on the topic of characters that we wanted to see in the MCU, I of course gotta talk about the devil himself. He made his first appearance as a serpent in Bible Tales for Young Folk issue 1, but he made his first full appearance as Mephisto in Silver Surfer issue 3. I don't think I have to explain too much about this guy or why he's a threat. I mean, he's Satan. He's the literal devil of the Marvel Universe. He lives comfortably in hell with lesser demons that serve him. The reason we thought we were gonna get Mephisto in WandaVision goes back to something he did in the comics, which was kind of a big deal. The comic was Avengers West Coast Volume 2, issue 52. We find out the truth behind Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, who were in WandaVision. Now it turns out the 5 pieces of Pandemonium's soul were actually Mephisto. So Mephisto tricked Pandemonium and gathered beings possessing the appropriate fragments, and 2 of those 5 fragments just happened to be children of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. So when Pandemonium arrived, he took the kids, which in turn gave Mephisto full strength, and this left Scarlet Witch having a breakdown. Mephisto's awesome. His deals are always crazy. Like after the comic Civil War, when everybody knew Spider-Man's identity, Spider-Man had to make a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May because she got shot because he revealed his name to the public. So he's pretty wild. That's just one of many, many horrible deals. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. So enter Project MODOK. Spelt with a C at the end, not a K, that's important. So MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. Sounds like the perfect tool to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. I mean, he's already a villain. You guys are just kind of making this happen for him. The scientists did not prepare that with great power comes great superiority, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, which stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad villain in the new Avengers PS4 game, and he's as crazy as it sounds in that game as well. And finally, number 1, Morgan Le Fay. Now, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe leaning into the witch madness for the conclusion of WandaVision, we might actually get to see Morgan Le Fay on the big screen soon enough. She made her first appearance in Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955, and she's been a recurring villain to the Avengers in the comics for a while now. And when the Dark Avengers were formed by Norman Osborn, Morgan was their first enemy to face off against. She's a powerful spellcaster, one of those spells being reality warping by using these Norn stones. So she packs a punch. Elizabeth Hurley actually plays Morgan Le Fay in the show Runaways, and she's great when it comes to these witchy, devilish roles. I mean, she literally played the devil in the movie Bedazzled as well, which is pretty funny. She was made for the role, it seems.
Halfway through into number 5, Shadow Knight. Shadow Knight's real name is Randall Spector, Mark's younger brother. He was envious of Mark his entire life, which turned him into a horrible criminal. There was a murderer on the streets killing nurses called the Hatchet Man, so Moon Knight used his girlfriend Marlene as like bait to catch the killer. The plan worked, but Marlene perished. Yeah, And to make matters even worse, the Hatchet Man was revealed to be Randall. Randall later joined the cult of Khonshu, which ultimately resulted in him receiving the same powers as his brother Mark. However, he ended up choosing to use them for evil, donning the pseudonym Shadow Knight. Because, you know, every character needs to have a reverse version of themselves. Reverse Flash, Dark Archer, Bizarro. It was devastating for Mark to fight his brother and ultimately kill him by slitting his throat with a throwing crescent. Yeah, it doesn't get much worse than that, especially when you learn that Mark tried protecting Randall their entire lives. But then again, he killed your girlfriend, so... In at 4, Midnight Man. Originally a collector of art, Anton Mogart would commit robberies at the stroke of midnight to build his collection. When Moon Knight stops him, he seemingly drowns in a river, but instead, he ends up becoming deformed by the waste found within the sewers. Then he goes insane and starts collecting trash, and teams with Bushman to defeat their sworn enemy. When Midnight Man finds out he's dying from cancer, he decides to find his son, hoping that he can share some of his final moments with him. Mogart does what he can to stop his son from turning to a life of crime like he once did, and in the wake of his death, he becomes the hero Midnight. It didn't last, and he ended up becoming a cyborg for the Secret Empire, which, while sounding bad, I think it would be kinda cool, like, to be a cyborg. Like, as long as I still have, like, my free will, and my programming isn't controlling me, because that just doesn't sound like fun. Like, I want to be able to turn my arm into a giant cannon. That'd be great. Someone tries to mug me, I'm just like, sorry. Getting close to the end in number 3, Seth Falcon. He belongs to a Scottish sect of Knights Templar and has several amazing powers. I'll never do that accent again. Falcon first appeared in Mark Spector Moon Knight number 43. Seth Falcon is immortal, has superhuman strength and stamina, but his strongest power is his touch. Using his clawed fingers, Falcon can drain the life force out of any living being, aging them in the process. If he holds his grip for long enough, Seth can drain the entire life out of somebody, all of it, turning them into a rotted skeleton. However, there's a catch. Due to biofeedback, the draining process backfires if Seth uses it on anybody who shares his DNA code, even partially. Simply put, he can't drain his relatives because it causes the series of issues that then hurts and weakens his powers. And yep, that's right. You guessed it, of course, Moon Knight turns out to be one of his long-lost relatives, so Falcon has to rely on his superhuman strength and stamina to outlast Mark Spector in any mutual fight, which is good, because that kind of like levels the playing field. Penultimately, in at number 2, Cactus. Sometimes a name is just a name. It can have meaning, or it could just be something cool that the guy thought of that ended up kind of making sense. Other times, names are extremely direct and are probably too on point. That's the case with Cactus, who is exactly what he sounds like and nothing more. Created by Dominus, he's been a villain of the West Coast Avengers and Moon Knight on various occasions. Punching him definitely stings, but beyond that, it doesn't take all that much to break him or chop him up, because, you know, he's a cactus, which has actually happened before, though he can regenerate lost limbs, which I don't know if cactuses can do or cacti can do, but yeah, he's without a doubt one of the lamest villains in the Marvel Universe, but in my opinion, that makes him one of the coolest. This guy is literally a cactus, and that's hilarious. A couple years ago, the girl I was with at the time and I came up with a superhero that we called Cact Guy, who was basically, in essence, Cactus. And we didn't know that it was actually a thing. But it's funny to me that someone actually made this and then put it in the goddamn Marvel Universe. That's hilarious. That's amazing. And Cactus is my new favorite villain ever because of that. Hashtag Cactus in the MCU. And finally, in at number 1, Hunter's Moon. Dr. Batter was born in Luxor, Egypt, to 2 doctors and was an excellent student throughout his life, eventually becoming a doctor as well. He grew to become a very rational and serious person who didn't believe in any higher entities, despite still attending prayer and studying the Quran and the Hadith. This all changed when he was attacked by vampires and left to die on the streets, at which point he met the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Dr. Batter survived and became a worshipper of Khonshu, who fancied himself the god's second highest priest, and opposite of Mark Spector. After learning that Moon Knight had taken in vampires under his protection, Dr. Batter terrorized the Nightwalkers to get his attention. Hunter's Moon eventually confronted Moon Knight, chastised him for taking in enemies of Khonshu, and expressed his intentions to correct him. Dr. Batter beat Moon Knight and invaded the Midnight Mission to kill the vampires, but Spector recovered and knocked him unconscious after attacking him from behind. But you know what, after beating him, I'm not even gonna call it, that's kinda shady. I respect it.
Number 5, Volknar the Exhumer. Thanks to a Eternals and Guardians of the Galaxy from the MCU, the Celestials have become a more common Marvel god group, something that you can throw around at a party with a bunch of people that, you know, haven't read all the comics and they'll be like, I know who the Celestials are. Sweet. The Celestials are the one who created the Eternals and, in essence, in the MCU, use them to birth new Celestials. Celestials are creators of life, but tragically, worlds kinda have to be sacrificed in the MCU in order to create Celestials and incubate them. Earth was at one point one of the worlds threatened by the birth of a new Celestial, but in the MCU, the Eternals banded together to prevent Earth's destruction, managing to turn the waking Celestial into marble before it could basically rise up. However, in the comics, the dark truth the Eternals learn is that in reality, the Celestials actually plan to cultivate and then harvest humanity and Earth to use in their battle against the corrupted Dark Celestials and the Horde, which threatened both the Celestials and basically the universe. Where the Celestials are inherently seen as neutral or sometimes a good force, the Dark Celestials are pure evil and really only seek to awaken the Horde and to just destroy stuff. Vulcan the Exhumer was no exception and was a member of the final host of the Dark Celestials. Vulcan, with the others of his group, attempted to attack and destroy Earth, but Iron Man banded together with the Avengers after learning the secrets of the Unimind, because at that point the Eternals were gone. Creating a Unimind and banding together with the Celestials, Earth was able to fight back and defeat Vulcan and their brethren. Bye, Dark Celestials. Except not really, because, you know, can't. Celestials are hard to destroy, but you can stop them if you try really hard and you believe, and you create a Unimind. Number 4. Eternity. When it comes to the main comic book continuity of Earth 616, basically that's what Eternity is. Well, Eternity and his sister Infinity kind of. Together they embody the 616 universe. Eternity is also an abstract entity that represents time as well, making them pretty epically powerful. There are some that usurp them when it comes to their power levels, but those beings would usually be more on a multiversal level, on a whole other level of just powerful, because there's the universe and then there's the multiverse, baby. Eternity has been stated to be above all other abstract entities in the 616 universe, including Mistress Death, Master Order, and Lord Chaos. Within the realm of 616, there is almost no power too great for them to possess as the embodiment of that universe. They can easily manipulate it and bend it to their will as they see fit. Because I mean, they are it, so yeah. Number 3, the Living Tribunal. The Living Tribunal basically represents the justice of the multiverse. They are one of the most powerful beings and entities in the entire multiverse, though obviously aren't at the top of the food chain when it comes to our most powerful but lesser known gods of the Marvel Universe and multiverse. The Living Tribunal only has one form, but is in essence a constant and can exist across multiple realities at the same time. However, any alternates seen in this way are really just one entity, therefore not alternates, because the Living Tribunal is able to be at multiple places at once. As I said, they can exist. There can be multiple versions, but it's really just one. You know what I mean? It's an OP trait. I would love to be able to do that, to just have me and be as I am, but then have multiple versions of me across realities. Think of how much work I could get done. The Living Tribunal in essence represents the Marvel multiverse and exists to uphold its integrity and stability, working as the force of justice within the multiverse. The Living Tribunal also has power levels that are off the charts, and at one point a version of Adam Warlock took the place of this powerful entity after the Living Tribunal died, becoming the new Living Tribunal. Adam Warlock, Living Tribunal, here to do the job. There are lots of Adam Warlocks across the multiverse. Number 2, the one below all. I mean, it's really hard to say between these top 2 points who's really the more powerful between them, because they're kind of like different sides of the same coin. But this is what I decided to go with. If you disagree, you can let me know in the comments. I'm cool with that. We can have a debate. It'll be fun. I'm definitely giving away my number 1 spot, by the way, if you are deep in the god mythos of Marvel. But if you are, good for you. And also, thanks for still watching this video just to see what little old me thinks about these gods and their rankings. I think you're neat. The one below all is basically the real Satan or devil of the Marvel Universe. I know that Mephisto, Azazel, and Damon Hellstrom's father have all kind of claimed to be like the one and only devil, but really that title most truly belongs to the one below all. They are the dark side of the multiverse's creator, and as such are also an all-powerful, omnipotent, omniscient, multiversal entity and being. Although where the other half is more broad when it comes to, their focus, the one below all is pretty niche. They basically rule over gamma mutates, being the source of mutagenic gamma energy, which is still super cool. It's just that's kind of more their focus. They can possess and overtake gamma-powered or mutated individuals and bend them to their will, making them not just powerful, but also a pretty scary entity overall. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check it out in Immortal Hulk, which if you haven't read it, you should read it because it's the best thing since sliced bread. Number 1, the one above all. The one above all is so powerful they don't even have their own designated universe. Instead, they exist in all of the universes, being a multiversal entity and constant. And yes, if you haven't already guessed, they are the other side of the coin when it comes to the one below all. In essence, the one above all is like the god of the Marvel comic book multiverse. They are the creator of all things, and despite the existence of many other gods and immortal constants, both good and bad, they exist pretty much above them all. The one true power of the multiverse. They are seen to be an omnipotent and omniscient being who can do all and see all. It is believed that everything that exists in the multiverse was in fact ultimately created by them. Out of respect for the two major creative forces that started it all, the one above all has at times appeared to resemble both Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, often considered Marvel's founding fathers, which I think is also super sweet and appropriate. Who would the one below all though be? Who's like the Satan of Marvel? Number 5, Cypher. You know about Cypher, but do you know about Cypher? With an I, not with a Y. Just to be clear. Cypher is Elisa Tager and has powers similar to mutant Kitty Pryde. That is, she can phase, and even float or fly while in her phased state. She was part of the Jean School for Higher Learning and was initially discovered by mutant Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Zorn. Cypher also can turn herself invisible both visually and psychically. Well, almost completely invisible psychically. Almost. Immensely powerful telepaths such as Jean Grey have still been shown as being able to sense her. Although Cypher has only made a few appearances here and there in the comics, she still managed to make her way onto the Young X-Men team and has even reappeared on Krakoa. Number 4, Ink. Ink is another member of the X-Men who technically isn't a mutant. It was believed initially that his mutant ability was to gain powers from his tattoos. However, it was later revealed that it was Eric Gitter, aka Ink's tattoo artist, who was the mutant and who basically imbued Eric with these powers using his own mutant ability. Ink's tattoo artist was Leon Nunez, a mutant with no codename really, simply being known by his name or known as the tattoo artist. Ink would be recruited as one of the Young X-Men, initially believing he was working for Cyclops, but later learning he was in fact working for a disguised Donald Pierce. Ink fought alongside his fellow X-Men, but would leave the team for a time later on after discovering that he wasn't truly a mutant, when he found out where his powers really came from. When his fellow teammates needed his help, however, he would return armed with more tattoos from his artist. The Ten of Swords handbook listed him as an active member of the X-Men, so, he's there, he could be back again, I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen Ink in a while, but he's out there. Number 3, Slipstream. On my previous list I talked about the mutant known as Lifeguard, but now it's time to focus on her brother, who is also a mutant, don't you know, Davis Cameron, aka Slipstream. While his sister Heather worked as an actual lifeguard in Australia, Davis himself was a surfer. His powers weren't activated until later in his life and were actually awoken by Sage after his sister went missing, and it was revealed his latent mutant abilities could be used to help find and then rescue her. Slipstream's abilities allow him to create quantum portals, which can transport him and any passengers he takes along with him across great distances. However, it should be noted it requires a lot of concentration for him to bring others along with him. He can also track previous teleportations, allowing him to use these warp wave abilities to find his way to the destination and location of teleporters that he's tracking. Which I think is a pretty useful ability, tracking teleporters, because they're tricky. Number 2. Spider-Girl. Well, not naturally born, but kinda made in a lab, Spider-Girl made a single appearance in Avenging Spider-Man issue 16. She had similar powers to Spider-Man, but was made of a combination of spider and mutant DNA by the Jackal, using materials found in Mr. Sinister's lab. Wow, the Jackal in Mr. Sinister's lab just sounds like such a dangerous thing. As such, she also had the additional powers to shapeshift into a giant spider with 5 human eyes. While in this shape, she also had the power to spit purple mucus and even fire optic blasts from her eyes. Makes you think there might be some Summers DNA mixed in there, which honestly, if we're talking about Mr. Sinister's lab, I wouldn't be surprised. She ended up rampaging across the city of New York after the Jackal released her as part of a test. Fortunately, she was apprehended by Superior Spider-Man and the X-Men, who explained that she seemed to be a mutant and ended up taking her in after defeating her. We never really heard anything about her after that. Spider-Girl was created by Christopher Yost and Paco Medina. Who knows, maybe we'll see her again, I don't know. Number 1. Forget-Me-Not. Despite the fact that Forget-Me-Not is someone you definitely forget, you may have heard us talk about him on the channel before, because his powers are just so interesting. But for those who haven't heard of him or have simply forgotten him, let's give you a little refresher course. Forget-Me-Not is an X-Men member whose mutant power is that no one can ever remember him. This makes it easier for him to basically infiltrate places, but it makes it harder for him to ever connect with anyone, make a friend, or even have his teammates remember that he's actually on the team. This is why Forget-Me-Not is also usually left off of the official rosters for the team, and why you might never really see his name mentioned there, ever. Forget-Me-Not's psychic powers that enable him to go unnoticed and remain forgotten were actually so strong that even Professor Xavier struggled to remember him, and as it was revealed in X-Men Legacy issue 300, had to place within his mind a psychic hourly reminder just so he wouldn't forget permanently about Forget-Me-Not's existence. If you're wondering what happened to Forget-Me-Not in the end, he was forgotten. So, yeah. Number 5. Blindfold. Blindfold is Ruth Aldine and is a possible descendant of Destiny. She was born without eyes entirely. Her mutant powers allow her to manipulate astral energy, tap into the astral plane, and grant her specific telepathic abilities, including precognition and clairvoyance. She also has the ability to manipulate chaos factors and alter events in order to achieve a desired result, and maintains a reality warp resistance. Pretty useful. She also has some telekinetic abilities as well. Much of her power was lost to her, and she was in rough shape when she was admitted to the Xavier Institute. She had lost half her power and had her mind shattered by her brother. Blindfold had a really rough home life, and her brother Luca ended up coming home one day filled with hate for his sister and prepared to kill her with a chainsaw. When her mother stepped in to defend her, her mother was instead murdered by Luca, who blamed young Ruth's freakishness for his own actions. Luca ended up getting the death penalty for this crime, but when he died, it seemed as though his own mutant abilities manifested, causing him to shift into an astral or ghost-like form and attack Ruth. Blindfold has a close connection to Legion and would later end up in a relationship with the son of Charles Xavier. Yay! I don't know why I'm celebrating that, but I just think it's kind of a cute romance, I guess. Number 4. Triage. Triage was one of the mutants to appear after the dispersion of the Phoenix Force. Christopher Muse discovered his powers when a friend of his fell and hit her head while they were out dancing. It seemed as though she was dead until Christopher's touch seemed to heal and revive her, bringing her back to life. Eventually, he was apprehended by the police because of his miraculous healing ability, but would later be freed and recruited by the X-Men. He was one of the mutants who was captured and later killed by one using the X-gene cure after he refused to use his healing powers to help them. Triage seems to have had eternal youth and immortality as a result of his powers, in addition to being able to heal others and even reanimate the dead. Fortunately, since his death, he is one of the mutants that we have seen return by the Five on Krakoa, with him being spotted in the comics at Krakoan hotspot, the Green Lagoon. Number 3. Darkwind. X-Men teammates really do come in all shapes and sizes. Coming to us from Asgard, we have Dani Moonstar's mighty steed, Brightwind. Remember when Dani joined the Valkyraur after she lost her powers following M-Day? Yeah, it was during that time that she met and bonded with Brightwind. After leaving Asgard and returning to Earth, Brightwind came with her, but instead became known as Darkwind on Earth. So that's why I said Darkwind at the beginning of this point. By extension, he became a member of the X-Men and New Mutants along with Dani. Cute. Number 2. Ariel. Ariel is an alien from the planet known as the Coconut Grove. Her mutant power is persuasion, but due to her alien physiology, she can also teleport. Ariel herself is also related to another Ariel who visited Earth and inspired the character of the same name from William Shakespeare's play, The Tempest. There's a lot of Tempest references in my list today. Ariel, the one we're focusing on with this point, not her ancestor, also ended up on Earth after being sent there on a mission to collect samples from the mutants of Earth for her people to study. They themselves had reached an evolutionary standstill as such and were curious about the Earth mutants and their evolutionary process. It was during her time on Earth that she would meet up with and join the Fallen Angels, and later on in San Francisco would end up meeting the X-Men team and joining them for a time. Number 1. Sunpyre. You know Sunfire, but do you know Sunpyre? Sunpyre was Shiro Yoshida's younger sister, Leu. She also had powers and an attitude similar to her brothers, and first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue 392 in 2001. For those unfamiliar with Sunfire's or Sunpyre's abilities, both siblings possess the mutant ability of solar flare, which allows them to absorb solar radiation and convert it into superheated plasma. Using this ability, they could both cover their body in flame as they became like a flying, human-shaped sun. Sunpyre can use her power to emit plasma blasts and give off intense solar heat. Leu is one of the mutants who answered a psychic call to help defeat Magneto and save Professor X. After helping out the X-Men in that adventure, she'd later appear again as a member of the X-Corps. It is believed she died in action when the other members of X-Corps turned on her because Mastermind, Martinique Wingard, working in league with Mystique, was controlling them. Number 5. Spiral. Spiral has been an enemy of the X-Men, but would also become a member of Storm and Psylocke's X-Force team. She was a human known as Rita Hayward, who would end up in the Mojoverse and become part of a time paradox, having been attacked by her future mutated self, Spiral. Originally, she was a stunt woman who ended up falling in love with Longshot during his time on Earth and returned with him to the Mojoverse. When his plan to defeat Mojo failed, Rita was captured and was modified by Mojo to have 6 arms, one of which was completely cybernetic. Spiral herself is part cyborg, part human mutate as a result of the modifications performed on her. She was also the one responsible, acting as an agent of Mojo, for giving Psylocke her cybernetic eyes. True facts. Number 4. Shark Girl. Seriously, Wolverine and the X-Men has such a fun group of characters in it. If you haven't checked it out, you need to check it out. Aira dos Santos is one of that group. She first appeared in issue 20 of the series and has also been referred to as Were-Shark before, which is pretty fitting, as both names would imply she is basically part shark, part human, and that's also her mutation. Shark Girl is one of the mutants who appeared following the dispersion of the Phoenix Force. When her powers first manifested, both the Brotherhood and the X-Men attempted to recruit her to their causes. She refused both offers and was later kidnapped by Mystique, who attempted to then recruit her using force, basically. Fortunately, she was saved by Angel and would eventually agree to attend the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Shark Girl can transform into a full shark and can also transform into a part shark, part human, basically like a land shark. While in these forms, she can survive either underwater or on land and has enhanced strength, stamina, and speed. Number 3. Adam X. We are going back to the crazy Summers family tree for this one. Adam X is the half-brother of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan. His mother is Catherine Summers, but his father was the emperor of the Shi'ar Empire, Emperor Deken Naramani. Adam X first came on the scene in the 90s, and to hear his story, you'd easily be able to peg him as a 90s character. Trust. He was abducted when he was just a baby from the genetic lab in which he was created by Jonath, who became his adoptive father and raised him. Growing up, his mutant powers would manifest, which allowed him to basically set others' blood on fire, burning them from the inside out, which already sounds like such a 90s power in my mind. He can also ignite his own blood, which is very painful, but grants him a speed boost. Adam would then learn that he was a hybrid being, part Shi'ar, part mutant. Number 2. Petra. Petra has the ability to manipulate rocks and rock formations. She can cause earthquakes and even use her powers to create diamonds. In fights, she can bind her opponents or completely destroy them by having the earth move to swallow them, and she can transform rocks into different kinds of weapons and wield them against her opponents, sending them hurt hurtling towards them. Petra was recruited by Moira McTaggart after being apprehended by the police. Her family died in a rock slide when she was young, which to this day Petra actually wonders if she caused. Following that, she was moved into the foster care system, but after her adoptive father attempted to assault her, she used her powers to escape him and became a runaway. She discovered her ability to turn coal into diamonds, and she would later exchange these diamonds for a place to sleep, but eventually this kind of drew suspicion, and she was later tracked down and then taken in by the police. Fortunately, Moira arranged for her to be released, and then of course offered her a place as part of her team. Number 1. Sway. I love Sway. Her powers are just so cool and her origin is so tragic. I feel so bad for Sway, but I'm also like, these powers are awesome. I love the way that they're phrased. I love the way that they're used. It's neat. Sway's powers manifested when she was just a teenager. While visiting New York City in preparation for college, Suzanne's parents and herself ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were gunned down during an attack that was basically part of a gang war. While Suzanne's parents were killed in the attack, she miraculously survived due to the manifestation of her powers, which allowed her to manipulate the flow of time. She had instinctively stopped the bullets that would have hit her in midair, but she didn't have the experience or the understanding yet required to save her parents. Sway's powers allow her to control and manipulate time in her nearby vicinity. She can also rewind the temporal memory of a location, allowing her to basically review past events. It was using her powers that she was able to track down her parents' killers and report them to the police, helping them to apprehend those criminals. And revealing her abilities to the officers, she was basically put in contact with Moira McTaggart, and then of course ended up joining up with the X-Men. And that's also how Petra, Sway, and Vulcan all know each other. In case you read any of the new stuff and been like, who are these ladies? If you missed Deadly Genesis. Who are some of your favorite lesser known X-Men members? Which team members would you like to see return to prominence? Are there any villains who you'd love to see join the core team now that everyone is mostly getting along, on Krakoa? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 X-Men members you've never heard of Part 3. Gavin Sudarth comments, I can see Miss McKnight being able to use the abilities of Rogue and the Phoenix. Wow, that basically means I'm super powerful in your mind, so thank you. I'm gonna take that as a huge compliment. Also, I love Rogue and I love the Phoenix, so yeah. Zach Blackwood shares, I used to create so many of my own X-Men, names, powers, and backstories. Wish I got to share them. Well, I have 2 words for you, my friend. Fan fiction. Just write your own stories, and hey, you never know, maybe Marvel will catch an eye to those. You never know what could happen in the long run. Write it down, that's what I say. Corey responds, love the Charlie XCX sweatshirt. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for noticing that that sweatshirt was Charlie XCX that I was wearing in that video. Every time I wear that click sweater, no one ever knows that it's Charlie XCX, so thank you. Number 5. Trance. Trance is another mutant who is affiliated with the X-Men and even tried out to become an X-Men in training under Emma Frost, following the events of House of M. She was one of the lucky few, or unlucky few, I guess depending on your perspective, to remain powered. Hope Abbott, or Trance, possesses the power to leave her physical body, becoming ghost-like in appearance on panel, but in reality, she's just astral projecting. In other words, she's not as powerful as some other mutants who are able to astral project as, you know, part of their larger set of powers, generally being telepathic or telekinetic in origin. But hey, not everyone can astral project, so I still think this is pretty cool. I also like when people don't have like crazy awesome powerful things and then you still have to see them like try to figure out, how do I use this in a way that's cool and, you know, good, so I can be on the same level. I think that's cooler to read, but that's just me. Number 4. Stacy X. Although Stacy X hasn't made a ton of appearances, she is a memorable character due to her, interesting and sensual abilities. Former abilities, I guess I should say. We don't really know if she has been returned to the status of a mutant, but we do know that she has joined the mutant nation of Krakoa now. So considering that when we last saw her, she was missing those abilities that she used to have in her former appearance, I assume that she has participated in the Crucible, was killed by the mutant formerly known as Apocalypse, and has been resurrected as her former self. But also, there are a lot of people in line to just be returned to us, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in line to participate in the Crucible to earn their powers back, so who knows? Who knows where she is in that long line. Also, Apocalypse is no longer on the island following the events of Ten of Swords, so there is that. I don't know who's running the Crucible now. Who is like the replacement Apocalypse. Stacy X was part of the X-Men for a brief period after being rescued by them from her place of work, which was attacked and destroyed by the Church of Humanity. Stacy X used her powers at her place of employment to help make clients who came through feel good and grant them sensations of pleasure. She can also use her pheromone powers in combat to make her opponents feel not so good, manipulating their bodily functions. She makes you feel sick. Blech. Number 3. Loa. Loa is one of the resurrected mutants to rejoin us on Krakoa, reborn again. While you may not know her as well as some of the others, she has a long and storied past with both the X-Men, her fellow mutants, good pals Rockslide and Match, and even with Namor. In fact, Namor was the one who came to save the day after she first discovered her powers. Loa's abilities allow her to pass through other matter and in so doing destroy it on a molecular level. She discovered she had these powers when her dad was attacked by a shark while they were surfing together, and she passed through it, destroying it. Namor would later come to her and her father's rescue before the situation could escalate, and it was later revealed that her grandmother was actually an old friend of Namor's. Since then, she also gained the ability to breathe underwater after being exposed to the Atlantean amulet. The amulet also allows Loa's physiology to adapt so that she can survive in the depths of the ocean easily. Number 2. Match. You might know the Pyros, but do you know Match? Match is Ben Hamill, one of the mutants to appear in the new X-Men series, but making his first appearance in New Mutants. His powers are pyrokinesis, hence his name. It basically gives him control over fire, which he himself can generate, and also helps to make him immune to fire attacks and heat. Match is now not as hot on the radar, but was for a time the leader of the X-Men adjacent team, the Paragon Squad. He also participated in a competition for a place on Emma Frost's X-Men team, and has attended both the Xavier Institute and the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. I'm not sure if it's of or for, because of feels weird to me, but I think it is right. It's of or for, it's one of those. Number 1. Lifeguard. Lifeguard is Heather Cameron, a mutant who, as a response to life-threatening danger, gains the skills and powers necessary to save those lives around her. This power, or powers, not only works for her in regards to saving others, but also is a reactive power that applies to saving her own life, meaning she can get out of pretty much almost any kind of dangerous situation that she puts herself in. Before lifeguard was her codename, it was actually her profession, as she worked as a lifeguard in Australia where she lived with her brother Davis. Eventually, it was also implied in the comics that she has unknown Shi'ar heritage. We've seen her resurface in Dawn of X, popping up in Krakoa at the Green Lagoon bar, but it would also be super cool to see her play more of a prominent role at some point in the comics, as her powers are pretty neat and definitely super useful. But maybe too powerful? Maybe that's why we haven't seen her as much. Like Hope.
Number 5. Betty Ross, She-Hulk. While Jen Walters is known as the badass lawyer cousin of Bruce who also likes to get big and green and punchy, Betty Ross has also held the mantle of one of Earth's mightiest. Coming again from the Ultimate Universe, Earth 1610, Betty Ross made her first appearance in Ultimates issue 3, and she's the daughter of General Ross, and she was actually roommates with Janet Van Dyne in college. So Janet started seeing Hank Pym, you know, that guy who's not the best at all, and then Betty started to date Bruce Banner. Now, as she watched Banner turn into the Hulk and smash things around, she actually grew to like him even more. Maybe she's into the bad boys, who knows. And then later on, Bruce had been out on trial and given the death sentence, you know, being the Hulk and all. He got into some trouble, and she was just devastated. So at this point, Jennifer Walters comes into the picture, but not as another version of the Hulk, not as She-Hulk. No, she comes in because she cracked the code on the serum at this point. She figured it out. So Betty lied to Nick Fury and said that Jennifer Walters was actually planning on selling that serum, but really she was just pirating the new Star Trek early. Which isn't nearly as bad as selling a super serum. So Betty herself ended up injecting the serum right before jumping out of a shield jet, and then she landed on the ground, and now she announced that she is Plan B. We love a cool superhero entrance. So Betty fought Wolverine and actually managed to gouge his eyes out, which, you know, not too shabby. Wolverine ended up winning in the long run, so now Betty is forced to wear a necklace that would choke her if she turned bigger and turned into the Hulk. Some of these stories are fun, some of them are just tragic. Betty's story is mostly tragic in this sense. Number 4, Red Hulk. He made his first appearance in the Incredible Hulk issue 1 as General Ross, but come the first issue of volume 2, Ross goes beast mode. He becomes one of the Hulk's greatest threats. He becomes the Red Hulk. Now, Red Hulk was created using gamma radiation, just like our Hulk, but what makes him even more of a menace is the fact that he also has cosmic rays added to that aggressive mix. Now, the Red Hulk doesn't get stronger the angrier he gets like Bruce does, he actually gets hotter. He physically gets hotter, he starts to burn up. During one of their first run-ins with the Red Hulk, when the two Goliaths were battling it out, the sand around them while they were fighting actually turned into glass. That's how hot the Red Hulk had gotten. And when there's more glass, that just means there's more things to break. Number 3, the End Hulk. Written by Peter David, The Incredible Hulk The End shows us what Bruce Banner would look like after the rest of the world had fallen. So what happens when Bruce is the last thing alive, no thanks to his superpower? Well, in a one-shot released in 2002, we get the answer to that question. So after the events of this big nuclear fallout, Banner was the only person left alive, and the story opens up with Banner talking to just a vidbot, this floating camera that's always hovering 10 feet away from him. It's like the world's saddest vlog squad. It had found Banner when it was in the middle of confirming the eradication of humans, so now it follows him around forever, just waiting to see what happens. So Banner and the Hulk are on different levels at this point. The Hulk still wants to be a badass and fight things, but Bruce is done. He's tapped out. He looks around him and he sees giant mutated cockroaches, like, ew! He doesn't want anything to do with this planet anymore. He's done. He doesn't want to be alive anymore. But the Hulk, number 2, Infernal Hulk. In an alternate reality where Bruce Banner and the Hulk had separated, yes, it happens quite often, Bruce ended up becoming the new Sorcerer Supreme, which sounds like the improvement of a lifetime, but it's kind of not. And as for the Hulk side, oh, he gets cast into hell, gone, just right down below. Not as bright and optimistic, that's for sure. He makes his mark in Deadpool Annual Issue 1, and when the Hulk spends enough time in hell, he's bound to change, and I mean probably for the worse. He becomes the Infernal Hulk. And when Spider-Man and normal green version of Banner come from a parallel universe, the only way he's defeated is when he's tricked to destroy the Eye of Agamotto, which in turn banishes him back down to the underworld. So he's just destined for hell at this point. And finally, number 1, Joe Fixit Grey Hulk. Back in the day, Stan Lee actually wanted the Hulk to be gray, but due to ink and production problems, it ended up turning out green. Luckily, I mean, that's all we're used to now. Imagine if this guy was gray this whole time, that'd be kind of weird. So our first look back in 1962 at the Hulk was actually this gray version. Now, it was explained in the comics that basically because of Bruce Banner's repetitive use of the gamma radiation projectors, the character's skin went from being gray to green. So it made sense in the story. Now, the Gray Hulk and the Green Hulk are pretty much battling each other in Banner's mind. So they give the Grey Hulk a different identity now by referring to him as Joe Fixit, this tough, big, bad security guard who works at a casino in Las Vegas. Now, Grey Hulk doesn't get mad as fast. He's actually pretty intelligent and quite manipulative, which makes him even more of a threat. Now, the Grey Hulk would often come out at night, and then he'd go back to normal by dawn, which is just a nightmare. Imagine seeing this guy in the middle of the night, you're just walking in your car, you're like, is that the Hulk? Why is he wearing a suit? Why is he shuffling cards? What is this dude? There have been rumors that the Grey Hulk will make an appearance in the She-Hulk Disney Plus show. I mean, we saw Grey Vision, so now a Grey Hulk? Huh, how lucky are we? Too soon. That one felt like